Shintian held his head as he stumbled backward, staring at the unbelievable scene before him. What the actual fuck? Because lying on the bed before him, bound hand and foot with silk restraints, her breathing soft and uneven from whatever drug had been forced into her body, was a random beauty. Shintian's brain nearly short-circuited. 1 second ago, he'd been lying in bed scrolling through trash web novels at 3 a.m. The next second he appeared here. No explanation, no warning, just instant criminal charges. Shintian looked around in panic before immediately raising both hands. Okay. First of all, I didn't do anything. He pointed at the unconscious woman defensively, despite nobody else being in the room. I don't even know her. This is entrapment. Cosmic-level entrapment. Still freaking out, Shintian cautiously stepped closer to the bed. Then he saw her face clearly, and froze. Wait! His eyes widened. The cold, beautiful appearance. The elegant features. That arrogant, icy look that screamed, "Lower your voice. Your existence is already irritating enough." A horrible sense of familiarity slammed into him. No way. Shintian's face slowly turned pale. She looks exactly like the first heroine from that garbage web novel. Before he could finish, a cold, mechanical voice suddenly echoed in his head. Binding complete. Villain role system activated. Shintian froze. Ha! Host has successfully transmigrated into the web novel. My master forced me down the mountain to pick up wives. Silence filled the room. Then, what? Shintian nearly jumped into the ceiling. No, absolutely not. I dropped that novel after 400 chapters because the protagonist had room temperature IQ. Warning. Host currently possesses the identity of Young Master Shintian. Role, early stage villain. Story fate. Crippled by the protagonist, publicly humiliated, exterminated alongside entire family. Shintian went silent. His soul almost left his body. Slowly, he turned toward the mirror nearby. Blonde hair, light green eyes, sharp facial features so absurdly handsome that it could only have been done by God author himself. Tall, broad shoulders, muscular in all the right places. The kind of body that could make countless women willingly throw themselves at him. Shintian stared at the reflection for several seconds. Damn! This body really is handsome. Makes me want to punch myself. Unfortunately, the original owner's personality completely ruined the package. The same idiot who tried to force himself onto the first heroine, only to get crippled by the protagonist shortly afterward. And instead of quietly disappearing from the story like a normal character, the original Shintian immediately started screaming about revenge. He mobilized the Shin family's power again and again, using money, military, business suppression, connections, and even underground forces trying to crush the protagonist, only for everything he sent to get destroyed, again, and again, and again, until eventually the entire Shin family collapsed alongside him. Then Shintian remembered one final detail about the original owner. Oh right, this guy was also a legendary dog licker. The type to spend millions on a woman only to be left on read. A true grandmaster of simping. Shintian's face immediately twisted in disgust. Yeah, I refuse. Shintian immediately shook his head. Send me back. I do not have the mental capacity to deal with this bullshit. I'd rather sit behind a screen reading about this mess than actually live through it. Impossible. The system has already established a permanent connection with the host. Well, disconnect it. Request denied. You can't seriously expect me to stay here and get face-slapped by some overpowered protagonist with plot armor and negative IQ. Shintian pointed at himself angrily. I'm supposed to what? Stand there while he humiliates me in public, steals the woman I like, destroys my family, and then everyone claps because he's the protagonist? The host will receive extraordinary rewards after successfully completing the assigned villain role. All rewards may be brought back to the host's original world upon completion. Shintian opened his mouth, clearly preparing to reject the system again. But before he could speak, knock, knock, The sudden sound nearly made him jump out of his skin. In an instant, Shintian spun around and dropped into the worst fighting stance imaginable. One leg bent awkwardly, both hands raised like a discount movie ninja. His eyes narrowed dramatically. His mind raced wildly. Wait, could that be the protagonist already? No, impossible. He'd kicked down the door. Before Shintian could think any further, the door slowly opened. A large, fat man who was sweating walked in while carrying 2 cases. "Young master," he sounded like a pig. "I brought the camera and recording equipment you requested." Shintian quickly got back into a regular pose, forcing a stiff smile onto his face as he remembered the very first chapter that made him leave over 30 hate comments under the web novel. The scene where the original Shintian planned to record compromising photos and videos of the defenseless heroine, only for the protagonist to burst through the window, save the beauty, dispel the drugs in her body with his cultivation techniques, and then beat Shintian half to death before delivering some self-righteous speech. God, this web novel was so fucking stupid. Shintian sighed. Just set it up. At this point, Shintian had no choice but to follow the plot. The sooner he could complete his role and return to his original world, the better. At least that was what the system claimed. Honestly, Shintian didn't fully trust it. As an experienced novel reader, he knew systems could be absolute scam artists. Some treated hosts like slaves. Some handed out impossible missions. Some waited until the host got emotionally attached before dropping the real reward was friendship ending. Absolute terrorism. Still, if the system was telling the truth, if he could really return to his world with supernatural rewards, then maybe suffering through this nonsense would actually be worth it. "Please don't screw me over," Shintian muttered internally. The system values long-term cooperation with the host. Once everything was set up, the fatty gave a respectful half-bow before leaving the room. However, the jealousy in his eyes was impossible to hide. After all, his young master was about to taste the famously untouchable iceberg beauty of the business world, Ling Shuangxue, the cold CEO countless rich young masters dreamed about. A woman everyone desired, yet none dared approach because of Shintian. The moment the door shut, silence filled the room once more. Shintian immediately closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Calm down. He knew he needed to focus. This was just acting. Complete the role. Get the rewards. Go home. That was it. Slowly exhaling, Shintian picked up the recording device and turned it on. Then he walked toward the bed. At that moment, Ling Shuangshua's breathing grew heavier as she found herself waking up. The aphrodisiac burning through her body made her limbs weak and her thoughts sluggish, as if her mind was wrapped in fog. Even keeping her eyes open felt difficult. "You bastard!" Ling Shuangxue muttered weakly. "What did you do to me?" Shintian cleared his throat. "Mwahaha!" He forced out a villainous laugh so fake it almost made him die from embarrassment. "Your body is now mine. Soon you'll become my woman. You should feel honored." Shintian lightly touched her cheek with his free hand. Ling Shuangxue flinched instinctively. "Don't touch me." Then suddenly, a strange voice echoed inside her mind. "God, this acting is painful." Ling Shuangshue's dazed eyes widened slightly. Her breathing paused for a moment. "What?" The voice sounded extremely close, almost as if it came from right beside her. But Shintian's lips hadn't moved. "Even if I know the protagonist is about to burst through the window and save her, this still feels messed up." Ling Shuangshue's already dizzy mind became even more confused. For a second, she thought the drug had finally fully affected her brain. Hallucinations? Her vision swayed slightly. No, the voice sounded too clear, too coherent. Slowly, Ling Shuangshue's gaze lifted toward his face. "I've wanted your body for a long time," Shintian declared dramatically. "Jesus Christ, I sound like a hentai villain." Ling Shuangxue froze completely. This time she was certain. That voice was coming from Shintian, or more accurately, from inside his head. Before either of them could take another breath, Crash. The sound of shattering glass exploded throughout the room. Shintian nearly jumped out of his skin as he hurriedly turned toward the now broken window. And there he was. A tall figure stood amidst the broken glass. His appearance wasn't overwhelmingly handsome, but his features were sharp and striking. Black hair tied into a loose ponytail, pitch-black eyes filled with arrogance, and on his face, a ridiculously cocky grin. What truly caught Shintian's attention, however, was the outfit. Or rather, the lack of one. The man looked like he'd just crawled out of a dumpster behind a gas station. His clothes were ripped in multiple places, wrinkled beyond salvation, and somehow even had mustard stains on them. Shintian stared blankly. Why does the protagonist look homeless? Ichin slowly cracked his knuckles, completely ignoring the glass shards scattered around him. You evil villain, he shouted righteously while pointing at Shintian. You dare try to harm such a pure fairy? Do you have no shame? Shintian stared at him for several seconds. Then, holy shit, it's actually him, the supreme medical sage protagonist. He's so lame. Ugh, I want to die from cringe. Oh. Ling Shuangxue became confused once more after hearing Shintian's inner voice. The supreme medical sage protagonist? Strangely enough, compared to the disgusting words coming out of Shintian's mouth earlier, his inner thoughts sounded almost normal. At the very least, they didn't sound malicious. If anything, he sounded more embarrassed than excited. However, before Ling Shuangxue could think further, another voice suddenly echoed inside her mind. Geez, I'm so cool. That entrance was absolutely badass. Everything about me is awesome. Ling Shuangxue froze. The voice was completely different from Shintian's. Her gaze instinctively shifted toward Yichun. Then the inner voice continued. Damn. So that beauty on the bed must be the woman Mr. Ling told me to protect. She's even hotter in person. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try to tap that ass later and make her join my harem. Yichun subconsciously licked his lips slightly. Ling Shuangxue's expression stiffened. The temperature around her seemed to drop several degrees. Her beautiful purple eyes slowly narrowed. My father sent this man to protect me? And these are his actual thoughts? The disgust Ling Shuangxue felt instantly skyrocketed. Originally, Yi Chen's entrance had left a decent first impression. But now, that impression shattered harder than the window he jumped through, especially when she compared him to Shintian. One outwardly acted like a shameless villain while internally feeling guilty. The other outwardly acted righteous and heroic, yet internally was already fantasizing about sleeping with her. Shintian suddenly pointed at Yichun and shouted angrily, Who the hell are you? How dare you interrupt this young master's fun time? Either get lost right now, or I'll call my bodyguards in here to beat you to death. Yeah, they weren't coming. Shintian knew that. After all, in the web novel, those bodyguards somehow couldn't even hear an entire window shattering. Yichun scoffed coldly. I'd like to see you try. The next moment, he launched himself forward. A faint layer of chi began gathering around his fist, causing the surrounding air to tremble slightly. Shintian's face instantly lost all color. Holy shit! It's real cultivation. Seeing Yichun flying toward him at terrifying speed, Shintian immediately closed his eyes and raised both arms in front of his face in an absolutely pathetic defensive stance. It looked less like self-defense and more like a man preparing to get hit by a truck. This is going to hurt so much. However, just before the punch could land, Stop! Ling Shuangxue's voice suddenly rang out. The shout was weak yet sharp, carrying the last bit of strength she could force out while suppressing the burning heat raging through her body. Yichun immediately halted his attack mid-motion. He turned toward the bed in confusion. Young miss, are you talking to me? Yichun asked while pointing at himself. Meanwhile, Shintian slowly opened one eye. Seeing that he was still not beaten, he cautiously lowered his trembling arms. Oh! Even he looked confused. Wait! This isn't supposed to happen. Shouldn't I be getting my ass kicked right now? Ling Shuangxue ignored Shintian's inner voice this time. Honestly, She still had no idea what things like plot, protagonist, or whatever any of this even meant. Right now, she had more important problems. Namely, the aphrodisiac in her body was becoming harder and harder to suppress. Her breathing grew increasingly uneven as heat spread throughout her limbs. You! Ling Shuangxue looked directly at Yi Chen. Get this drug out of my system first. And don't you dare even lay a finger on me. Her tone remained cold and commanding despite her current condition. Yi Chen blinked for a moment before immediately puffing out his chest confidently. Of course, he declared proudly. With me here, a mere aphrodisiac is nothing. Ling Shuangxue silently stared at him. From Shen Tian's inner thoughts earlier, she had already learned this man was supposedly some kind of supreme medical sage. So curing her should not be difficult for him. Afterward, she fully intended to fire Yi Chen immediately. There was absolutely no way Ling Shuangxue would allow a man with such disgusting inner thoughts to remain by her side as a bodyguard. System. What the hell is happening? Shen Tian was completely confused. This wasn't how the plot was supposed to go at all. Meanwhile, Yi Chen stood beside the bed, circulating his qi calmly, as he used a low-level healing technique called healing breath. A faint stream of energy flowed from his fingertips, slowly removing the aphrodisiac from Ling Shuangxue's body. The technique itself was fairly simple, using qi to cleanse toxins, drugs, and impurities without physical contact. Of course, Yi Chen deeply regretted that last part. What a shame! If I could place my hands directly on her skin, the effect would probably be better. Man! Her skin looks ridiculously soft. Despite those thoughts, Yi Chen maintained a righteous expression on the surface. After all, he knew this was his hero saves the beauty moment. Naturally, Ling Shuangxue heard every single disgusting thought loud and clear. Her expression grew colder and colder. At this point, even without the mind-reading ability, she could already tell exactly what kind of man Yi Chen was. Meanwhile, Shen Tian watched everything unfold with increasing anxiety, because the plot had already gone off track. Badly. Ling Shuangxue should have been grateful toward Yi Chen right now. Instead, she looked at him like she was evaluating whether or not he belonged in a trash can. Worse, she kept glancing at Shen Tian afterward with obvious confusion in her eyes. System. Explain this bullshit. Host. To answer your question. A brief pause followed. I have no idea. Shen Tian's eye twitched violently. You useless system. Obviously something happened. The plot is completely off. Don't tell me the entire story is changing already. For the first time since transmigrating, Shen Tian genuinely started getting angry. He didn't mind acting out villain scenes. But if the plot became unpredictable, then he'd have no clue when the protagonist might suddenly kill him or if he would fail his role. Host, please calm down. I will investigate the reason behind the abnormal plot deviation. Shen Tian clicked his tongue in annoyance. Everything was supposed to be simple. Play the villain. Get beaten up. Collect rewards. Go home. Yet somehow things had already become a complete mess. Listen carefully. If anything else changes in the plot, I'm demanding compensation. I expect bonus rewards for suffering through this bullshit. Understood. Host. The system will now focus on identifying the cause. After that, the system fell silent. Shen Tian exhaled slowly. Meanwhile, Ling Shuangxue had fallen into an entirely different kind of shock. The restraints around her wrists and ankles had already been removed by Yi Chen, allowing her to sit upright on the bed. Yet, instead of focusing on Yi Chen, her eyes remained locked onto Shen Tian. Villain role. Plot. System. What exactly is he talking about? And why did it sound as though he already knew what was going to happen? The more Ling Shuangxue thought about it, the stranger Shen Tian became in her eyes. Unfortunately, Yi Chen completely misunderstood her gaze. Seeing Ling Shuangxue staring toward Shen Tian, his brain instantly reached a conclusion. Young miss must want revenge. A heroic smile immediately appeared on his face. Young miss, now that you're safe, Yi Chen declared proudly. I'll beat him for you. His tone was overflowing with confidence and arrogance. Shintian immediately snapped back into character. "You think you can touch this young master and leave in one piece?" he shouted coldly. "Do you even know who I am?" He pointed arrogantly at himself. "I'm the son of the Shin family, one of the top 4 families in this very country. You think titles like that scare me?" Ichin laughed loudly. He began rolling up his sleeves as he walked forward confidently. "For young Miss Ling, I'd offend even all 4 great families if I had to." His heroic declaration echoed throughout the room. Then immediately after, "Damn, that definitely hit her right in the heart. Women love lines like that. At this rate, she'll probably fall for me before tonight even ends. I'm too smooth." Ling Shuangshua's eyelid twitched slightly. Her headache instantly became worse. Disgusting trash. That was the only thought in her mind right now. Taking a slow breath, Ling Shuangshue raised one hand slightly. "Stop!" Silence. Both Shintian and Yichun looked toward her at the same time. Then Ling Shuangshue spoke again. "Leave." For a moment, Yichen's eyes lit up brightly. He immediately misunderstood. Turning toward Shintian with a smug expression, he sneered, "Yeah, you heard the young Mississippi leave." Then he emphasized loudly, "Leave us alone." A pause. "I need to personally escort the young Miss home safely." Another pause. "Just us alone." The meaning behind his words could not have been more obvious. Shintian scoffed internally. Honestly, he was already tired of this nonsense. The plot had gone completely off script. His system had disappeared to investigate whatever bug was happening, and this protagonist looked one step away from proposing marriage after knowing Ling Shuangshue for 5 minutes. "I'm too tired for this shit. This isn't over," Shintian declared coldly, deciding to at least maintain his villain dignity before leaving. However, before he could even take a single step, "No!" Ling Shuangshue's icy voice rang out once more. "Young Master Shin can stay." Her cold eyes shifted directly toward Yichun. "I want you to leave." The room instantly fell silent again. Even the atmosphere seemed to freeze. Yichen's confident expression completely stiffened. "Ha!" For several seconds, he genuinely didn't know how to respond. Meanwhile, Shintian himself looked equally confused. What the hell is happening anymore? Then suddenly, this wasn't supposed to happen. The panic in Yichen's inner voice exploded instantly. Ling Shuangshue almost wanted to laugh coldly. So even young Master Shin knew this situation was strange. "Young miss?" Yichen forced out awkwardly. "I really don't think you should be left alone with this spoiled, lustful brat." His eyes locked onto Shintian with hostility. Because in Yichen's mind, Ling Shuangshue was already his woman, and there was absolutely no way he would allow another man to stay alone with her. Not even for a moment. After all, Yichen didn't want a green hat on his head. "That is my decision. Now leave." Ling Shuangshue waved her hand dismissively, her tone cold and absolute. "You're fired. I'll tell my father to give you a check for 10,000. Yichen's expression instantly darkened. His fists clenched tightly. "This bitch. I literally saved her and this is how she repays me. Just wait until I get her into bed someday. Then she'll be begging for me." Ling Shuangshue's beautiful face grew even colder. The disgust in her eyes became almost tangible. "What are you still standing there for?" she snapped. "Get out." Yichen's face twitched slightly. However, seeing her icy expression, he swallowed his anger and forced himself to maintain his cool image. Without another word, he turned around, stepped back toward the shattered window, and jumped out. The room instantly became quiet again. Meanwhile, several streets away, Yichen landed on the sidewalk before spotting a nearby group of thugs loitering near an alleyway. Still furious, he immediately walked over and started beating them senseless to vent his frustration. After several screams and the sound of fists slamming into flesh, Yichun finally exhaled and calmed down. "It's fine. These things take time." He shoved his hands into his pockets while consoling himself. "Sooner or later, that ice-cold goddess will fall for me." A cocky grin slowly returned to his face. All women eventually do. With that thought, his mood instantly improved as he walked off into the night. Back inside the hotel room, Ling Shuangxue took a slow breath before finally speaking. You know, I can hear your inner voice. The moment those words entered his ears, Shintian closed his eyes. That explains why the plot completely derailed. He rubbed his temple tiredly before walking over to a chair in the corner and sitting down heavily. At this point, he completely dropped the arrogant young master act. No exaggerated sneers. No fake villain laughter. Just exhaustion. Ling Shuangxue quietly observed him. The difference between his outward act earlier and his current demeanor was almost absurd. Can you explain what you meant earlier? She asked calmly. Her sharp eyes narrowed slightly. From what I can tell, you aren't actually Shintian. Shintian let out a weak laugh. Wow. He leaned back into the chair. You're way smarter than the novel made you seem. Not so bitchy. Ling Shuangxue frowned slightly. Enough avoiding the question. Then after a short pause, she added coldly. And you should know calling me a bitch is incredibly rude. Shintian shrugged. You do come off that way sometimes. You. Ling Shuangxue instantly stood up. Shintian also rose from his seat. At his full height, he towered over her easily. Then his expression became serious. You're a heroine. Ling Shuangxue froze slightly. A heroine in a trashy urban web novel I was reading before I suddenly transmigrated into this body. Shintian pointed at himself. I got thrown into the role of a cannon fodder villain and given a system. My job was simple. Act like an arrogant idiot. Get face slapped by the protagonist. Get beaten up repeatedly. Eventually die. Then return to my original world with rewards. Shintian exhaled slowly. But now the plot's changing. His eyes met hers directly. And I doubt you're interested in playing your role anymore. Ling Shuangxue quietly sat back down onto the bed. For the first time in years, genuine confusion appeared on her face. So, she looked downward slightly. I'm just a heroine in some web novel? Shintian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he simply crossed his legs and gave her time to process everything. Several moments later, Ling Shuangxue slowly looked back up. If what you're saying is true, her voice became quieter. Then that means you know the future of this world? Shintian nodded once. A faint smile suddenly appeared on Ling Shuangxue's face. It was small, subtle, yet breathtakingly beautiful. So, she said softly, what was supposed to happen to me? As she spoke, she lightly stretched one leg forward until it brushed against Shintian's. Shintian glanced downward briefly before answering honestly. If the plot stayed the same, you would have respected Yi Chun after he saved you tonight. You wouldn't complain about him becoming your bodyguard. Then he'd keep saving you over and over while constantly face slapping people. Eventually you'd fall in love with him. Shintian paused, then laughed dryly. And after that, you'd basically become background decoration while he went around collecting more women for his harem. Ling Shuangxue remained silent for several moments, then quietly asked, Can you kill him? Shintian blinked. Honestly, hearing such cold words from the mouth of the web novel's iceberg business goddess felt strangely surreal. He thought about it seriously for a moment before shrugging. Well, that'd be pretty difficult. He's basically the fated child of this world. The protagonist. Shintian rubbed the back of his neck tiredly. People like him usually survive getting hit by trucks, explosions, poison, assassinations, and probably nuclear weapons. It honestly depends on whether my system is useful or not. At this point, Shintian already understood something important. Trying to continue acting like the original villain was pointless. If Ling Shuangxue could hear his inner thoughts, then there was a high chance the other heroines eventually could as well. Which meant his evil young master act was fundamentally broken from the start. Instead of following the plot, he might genuinely have to go against it now. Ling Shuangxue narrowed her beautiful eyes slightly. This system of yours, can it strengthen you? Cultivation? Abilities? Something that lets you fight back. Shintian shrugged again. I honestly don't know yet. Worst case scenario. A faint smile appeared on his face. I abuse my future knowledge. I know all of Yi Chen's opportunities, encounters, connections, hidden treasures, and the people who help him rise. If I really wanted to ruin him, there are plenty of ways. Ling Shuangxue quietly listened. For some reason, the more casually Shintian spoke about altering fate itself, the more reliable he seemed. Looking down at his watch, Shintian stood up before lazily cracking his neck. Well, it's getting late. I'll head back for tonight. As he walked toward the door, his expression became slightly more serious. But whatever you do, stay away from Yi Chen. Ling Shuangxue blinked slightly. Shintian opened the door halfway before glancing back. Bad things happen to women around protagonists. The room became quiet. Ling Shuangxue slowly stood up and followed him toward the entrance. Then, she hesitated briefly. Can I contact you tomorrow? I'd like to discuss this more. Shintian waved dismissively without even turning around. Sure. Fine with me. Ling Shuangxue quietly looked at his back. Then, a faint blush slowly appeared on her normally icy face. If you can truly change my fate. Her voice became softer. Then I'll marry you. Shintian's footsteps instantly paused. Silence filled the hallway for several seconds. Shintian glanced over his shoulder. Holy shit. Why are heroines this easy in urban novels? Ling Shuangxue's face turned so red it looked like steam might start coming out of her ears. I heard that, you shameless bastard. Without another word, Ling Shuangxue stormed off, leaving Shintian standing there with a completely blank expression. Oh! He stood silently for several seconds. If someone looked closely, they could practically see 3 floating question marks above his head. Welp! Shintian shoved his hands into his pockets. Women are confusing. Muttering to himself, he casually began walking down the hallway. Unfortunately, by the time he reached the elevator area, he saw a familiar figure already standing there. Ling Shuangxue. The moment their eyes met, an awkward silence instantly filled the air. Well, Shintian said while stepping beside her. This is awkward. Ling Shuangxue immediately turned her head away, refusing to make eye contact. At this point, she wanted to bury herself alive from embarrassment. What was wrong with me? Why would I suddenly say I'd marry him? Her usually calm and icy mind had become complete chaos tonight. This was a total destruction of her cold iceberg CEO image. Calm down. Act normal. You are Ling Shuangxue. You are elegant. You are composed. Unfortunately, the harder she tried to calm down, the redder her ears became. Ah! This is so embarrassing. I sound insane. He probably thinks I'm desperate. Why did I say that so casually? I barely even know him. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. Both of them quietly stepped inside. You're going to the first floor too? Shintian asked casually. Ling Shuangxue let out a tiny squeak-like response. Yeah. Shintian pressed the button before taking a step back. Then silence returned once more. The elevator slowly descended. Meanwhile, Shintian suddenly heard the system's voice again. Host, I have discovered the reason behind the plot deviation. Before it could continue, Shintian interrupted internally. No need. I figured it out already. A brief pause followed. Then Shintian narrowed his eyes slightly. Can you change yourself? Change into a proper villain system instead of this role-playing villain system nonsense. If the heroines can hear my inner thoughts, then pretending to be my role is pointless. At this point, I might as well just become an actual villain and hijack the plot. The system became quiet for a moment. Please give the system time to process this request. I will attempt restructuring. Ling Shuangxue, who could hear every word of Shintian's inner thoughts, immediately realized he was talking to the system, so she wisely chose not to interrupt. However, her eyes slowly drifted toward Shintian's reflection in the elevator doors. Become an actual villain? Ding. The elevator doors slowly opened to the first-floor lobby. Shin Tian immediately stepped forward, his expression calm, though a faint coldness flickered within his eyes. Behind him, Ling Shuangxue quietly followed. The embarrassment and blushing from earlier had completely disappeared. By the time they reached the lobby, she had already returned to her usual cold and untouchable demeanor. There was no way she would allow outsiders to see her in such a flustered state. Meanwhile, sitting nearby on a couch, the fat man suddenly froze mid-bite while stuffing chocolate into his mouth. His eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at Shin Tian and Ling Shuangxue walking out together. Slowly, he licked the chocolate off his fat fingers. Holy shit! Did young Master Shin already conquer the iceberg goddess? Respect instantly exploded within his heart. As expected of young Master Shin, without hesitation, he secretly pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. I need to show the boys this. This is the man we follow. Outside the hotel entrance, several bodyguards wearing black suits immediately noticed Shin Tian approaching. Panicked, they hurriedly threw away their cigarettes and rushed back into formation with professional expressions plastered across their faces. Young Master Shun, one of them said respectfully. We thought you'd be staying upstairs longer. Shin Tian instantly glared at them. Shut up. His tone was icy. Just take me home. Then after a short pause, he added, and don't bring tonight up ever again. His eyes narrowed slightly. And if you see President Ling in the future, don't bother her. The bodyguards immediately nodded nervously. Meanwhile, Shin Tian glanced at the cigarette smell lingering around them and finally understood why none of them had been guarding the hallway earlier. These idiots had all been downstairs smoking. Talk about shitty bodyguards. I seriously need to replace these clowns. Ling Shuangxue almost let out a laugh after hearing Shin Tian's inner thoughts. A tiny pust sound escaped her lips before she quickly suppressed it. Everyone instantly looked toward her. Ling Shuangxue's expression immediately froze over. What are all of you staring at? She said coldly. I'm going home. The surrounding bodyguards instantly lowered their heads. As Ling Shuangxue reached the glass entrance doors, she suddenly stopped. Turning slightly, she glanced back at Shin Tian. Mr. Shin. Her tone became calmer. I expect you to actually follow up. Shin Tian lazily waved one hand. Relax. I'll contact you later. There are a few things I need to figure out first. Then after a short pause, he added, I'll explain over text. Ling Shuangxue quietly stared at him for a moment before giving a small nod. Without another word, she stepped outside, entered a waiting taxi, and left. Shin Tian watched the vehicle disappear into the distance before finally walking toward the parking area. There, he found his personal driver asleep behind the wheel of a black Rolls-Royce. The man was even snoring slightly. Shin Tian stared blankly for several seconds, then knocked hard against the window. The driver immediately woke up in terror. Don't rob me. He curled up defensively in his seat. Shin Tian rolled his eyes so hard it almost hurt. Unlock. He knocked on the window again. The fucking door. The driver finally recognized him and nearly had a heart attack. Young Master Shin? Sweating nervously, he hurriedly unlocked the car. Oh, of course, young master. Shin Tian entered the vehicle before finally relaxing slightly against the leather seat. Though only slightly, because he already knew something important. From this moment onward, he was officially at war with the protagonist. Drive me home, Shin Tian ordered calmly. The driver hesitated. Which home, young master? Shin Tian paused briefly while sorting through the original owner's memories. Honestly, this bastard owned way too many properties. Finally, he answered, the mansion near the red light district. Yes, young master. The Rolls-Royce slowly pulled away into the night. Author. Thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. Inside the Ling family estate, the atmosphere was suffocating. Crash. An expensive vase shattered against the wall. Ling Han, the patriarch of the Ling family, stood in the middle of the destroyed living room with rage written all over his face. Sitting calmly on a nearby couch, Yi-chun crossed his legs while maintaining an indifferent expression, almost as if the chaos around him had nothing to do with him. Only the faint smugness hidden in his eyes revealed his true thoughts. Nearby, Qin Ruobing hurriedly tried calming her husband down. "Dear, please relax," she said softly. Little Shuangxue was probably traumatized after tonight's incident. Her emotions weren't stable. "Shut up." Ling Han instantly backhanded her across the face. The loud slap echoed throughout the living room. Several nearby maids immediately lowered their heads in fear. Qin Ruobing stumbled slightly before holding her reddened cheek silently. Meanwhile, Ling Han continued roaring furiously. "My own daughter dares treat young Chen like this?" His chest rose and fell violently. "Young Chen's master was my benefactor. And this is how my own blood repays his disciple? Ungrateful. Absolutely ungrateful." Yi-chun silently nodded inwardly. "Exactly, this is how people should treat me. Respect, fear, admiration." His thoughts became increasingly smug. This old man at least understands how things work. Unlike that cold woman. Yi-chen's eyes flickered slightly. "Still, once I eventually take over the Ling group and marry Ling Shuangxue, I'll let the old man retire peacefully. Maybe let him hold a few grandchildren too." Thinking of that future, Yi-chen's mood instantly improved. Meanwhile, Ling Han suddenly turned toward a nearby maid. "Where is that unruly girl?" The maid immediately trembled in fear. I don't know, sir." Ling Han looked ready to explode again. Seeing this, Qin Ruobing silently stepped away while suppressing the tears in her eyes. After leaving the living room, she quietly took out her phone and sent a message to her daughter. "Qin Ruobing, where are you? Ling Shuangxue, about to be home. Why? Qin Ruobing, your father is having another episode again. The bodyguard you fired is also here. Ling Shuangxue, then kick him out. Qin Ruobing, your father highly values this young man because of his master. Don't come home tonight. Stay somewhere else for now. I'll calm your father down somehow. Ling Shuangxue, alright." Seeing the final message, Qin Ruobing finally let out a sigh of relief. At the very least, her daughter wouldn't return home tonight and walk directly into her father's rage. Truthfully, Qin Ruobing understood why her husband had become like this over the years. The Ling family was falling. Business partners were withdrawing. Enemies constantly attacked them from every direction. The pressure on Ling Han had only grown heavier with time. And now, after years of desperation, they had finally found what seemed like a saving grace. Someone powerful enough to protect the Ling family without needing to marry their daughter off to one of the other major families. Qin Ruobing walked back into the living room. This time, she remained silent. She simply stood nearby and watched as her husband gradually lost steam after his earlier outburst. Meanwhile, Ling Han finally turned toward Yi-chun with guilt written across his face. "Young Chen," he sighed heavily. "I'm truly sorry for how my daughter treated you tonight. I swear I'll make things right." Yi-chun immediately stood up. With a calm smile, he gently grabbed Ling Han's shoulder. "Mr. Ling, my master saved your life all those years ago. So helping the Ling family is only natural for me." His expression appeared upright and sincere. "I don't blame Miss Ling. She was traumatized by tonight's situation. She simply wasn't thinking clearly." Ling Han's eyes instantly filled with even more appreciation. The more he looked at Yi-chun, the more satisfied he became. Powerful, calm, understanding, and most importantly, connected to that mysterious old benefactor who once saved his life. "You really are mature beyond your years," Ling Han praised sincerely. "A true dragon among men." He let out a hearty laugh while patting Yi-chen's shoulder heavily. "With you protecting my daughter, I can finally feel at ease." Yi-chun smiled modestly on the surface. "Of course, Mr. Ling. However, internally. After all, she'll belong to me sooner or later anyway." Yi-chun almost laughed out loud. Honestly, he was extremely satisfied with how things were progressing. Despite some missteps, his master truly had vision. Sending him down the mountain and arranging this opportunity was basically handing him a shortcut into high society. Sure, the Ling family was declining. But so what? With his abilities, saving them would be easy. And once he did, the entire Ling family would naturally become his stepping stone, including Ling Shuangxue herself, who would just fall into his harem. Before Yi Chun could continue fantasizing about his glorious future. Bzzz. His phone suddenly vibrated violently in his pocket. Yi Chun frowned slightly before taking it out. "Mr. Ling," he said calmly. "Please excuse me for a moment." Ling Han immediately nodded. "Of course. Take your time." Yi Chun walked a few steps away before glancing down at his phone. At first, his expression remained indifferent. His brows slowly furrowed. Something was trending. Curious, he tapped the notification. The moment the screen loaded, Yi Chun froze. His pupils contracted sharply. The smug expression on his face instantly vanished. An ugly expression slowly twisted across his features. Bloodshot veins appeared in his eyes. His jaw clenched so hard that grinding noises could almost be heard. Crack. The phone screen shattered slightly under the pressure of his grip. Yet Yi Chun barely noticed. Impossible. His breathing slowly became heavier. Nearby, Ling Han immediately noticed something was wrong. "Young Chen." A trace of concern appeared on his face. "Are you all right?" Without saying a word, Yi Chun slowly turned the cracked phone screen toward him. Ling Han looked over, then froze. Even through the damaged screen, the contents were perfectly visible. It was a social media post, and it had completely exploded online. Over 1 million likes, hundreds of thousands of comments, reposts flooding endlessly. Even many influential figures within high society had already begun discussing it, because the image attached to the post was incredibly clear. It showed Ling Shuangxue walking side by side with Shin Tian inside a hotel lobby. And in the photo, her usually cold expression looked strangely soft, despite her trying to contain it. Author: thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. Inside one of the Shin family's countless mansions, Shin Tian lay flat on his back across an absurdly expensive bed, staring blankly up at the ceiling. The room itself looked less like a bedroom and more like a luxury hotel suite designed by someone with too much money and zero restraint. "So you can just switch your entire purpose like that?" Shin Tian asked lazily. The system responded calmly. "Yes, host. Due to an unknown breach occurring within this web novel world, the original story progression has already deviated. As a result, the host can no longer properly fulfill the role of a cannon fodder villain. Therefore, the system has updated accordingly." A small grin slowly appeared on Shin Tian's face. "So, basically, I'm unemployed from being a punching bag. Correct." Shin Tian let out a laugh. "And here I thought you were just gonna tell me to go fuck myself and continue getting beaten half to death." He folded his hands behind his head comfortably. "I'm glad we've come to an understanding." "Of course, host. The system's primary purpose is to ensure the host survives while maximizing benefits. The host's new objective is simple. Become the villain that defeats the protagonist." The smile on Shin Tian's face slowly widened. Now that sounded significantly more fun. Displaying updated system interface. The lights in the room dimmed slightly. 2 blue holographic panels suddenly appeared before Shin Tian's eyes. Host: Shin Tian. Fate value: -100. Heavenly suppression. Cultivation: none. Target: Yi Chun. Identity: Son of Destiny, Supreme Medical Sage. Fate: 10,000. Cultivation: Inner Core Realm. Status: Rising. Threat level: Extreme. Able to die: No. Silence. Shin Tian stared at the panel for several long seconds. "Excuse me." He slowly sat upright on the bed. "What the fuck do you mean able to die? No?" As the Son of Destiny, Yi Chun currently possesses the protection of fate. Under normal circumstances, he cannot truly die. That sounds incredibly unfair. Correct. And my fate is negative? Correct. And what the hell is heavenly suppression? As a villain, the host is naturally rejected by the world's fate. The heavens themselves currently wish for the host's death. Shintian went silent. Wow. He rubbed his face tiredly. So, let me summarize. I have negative fate. The heavens hate me. The protagonist can't die. And he has enough fate to probably survive getting hit by a meteor. Correct. This world is bullshit. The system remained silent. Then after a brief pause, would the host like to open the beginner villain gift pack? Shintian's eyes instantly narrowed. Now we're talking. Yes. Opening beginner villain gift pack. Ding. Do you have received the following rewards? Cultivation. Foundation establishment. Host has gained the ability to sense and circulate chi. Charm. Max value. Host's appearance and temperament have reached peak perfection. Item. Life-protecting necklace. Automatically activates upon lethal damage. Negates one fatal attack. Status. Unused. The moment the rewards entered his body, Shintian immediately felt something change. A strange warmth spread throughout his limbs as the entire world suddenly became clearer. The air, the floor, the walls, everything around him seemed filled with invisible streams of energy. Chi. He could feel it naturally flowing throughout the environment like currents of water. Whoa! Shintian slowly sat up from the bed. Even his body felt lighter and stronger than before. Not overwhelmingly powerful, but definitely beyond the limits of a normal human. Without hesitation, Shintian got out of bed and walked toward the bathroom mirror. The moment he looked up, even he froze for a second. Holy shit! He was already heaven-defying handsome before, but now, it had become unreasonable. His facial features looked impossibly perfect. His green eyes carried a strange, natural charm. Even his temperament had subtly changed, becoming more elegant and mysterious. The type of face that could genuinely ruin someone's life emotionally. This is dangerous. Shintian narrowed his eyes at his own reflection. At this level, I'm probably capable of accidentally creating yanderas. Then his gaze shifted downward slightly. Around his neck hung a silver-black necklace emitting a faint glow. The life-protecting necklace. Seeing it made Shintian finally relax slightly. At least now he had one extra life. Alright, Shintian leaned casually against the sink. So basically, if I want to kill the protagonist, I need to strip away his fate first. Correct? Host. The system calmly responded. The protagonist's greatest weapon is not his cultivation. It is fate and luck itself. As long as Yi-chun possesses enough fate, opportunities will continuously appear around him. He will survive impossible situations. Enemies will underestimate him. Women will favor him. Powerful experts will support him. Even heaven itself will protect him. Shintian clicked his tongue. Typical protagonist bullshit. Therefore, the host's objective is simple. Destroy or steal the opportunities that originally allowed Yi-chun to rise. His encounters. His treasures. His allies. His women. His resources. Every loss will weaken his fate. Every theft will strengthen the host. A dangerous smile slowly appeared on Shintian's face. So, I can eventually become stronger than him. Correct. Once the protagonist's fate drops below a critical threshold, he will lose heaven's protection. At that point, Yi-chun will become killable. Shintian slowly cracked his neck. Interesting. For the first time since transmigrating into this world, he genuinely became excited. Besides cultivation, will I eventually get other abilities too? Like divine-level singing, divine-level cooking, business skills, hacking abilities, acting skills, stuff like that. Honestly, Shintian had absolutely no shame about relying on the system. It was his golden finger. If someone handed him cheats, then he was going to abuse them shamelessly. The host will receive generous rewards upon successfully suppressing the protagonist. Shintian instantly smirked. I'm taking that as a yes. His white teeth gleamed slightly under the lighting as his mood improved considerably. A system, cultivation, future knowledge, and now potentially countless absurd abilities. Shintian walked out of the bathroom and grabbed a black coat nearby. Well then, a dangerous grin slowly appeared on his face. I guess it's time to go meet another heroine. According to the original plot, tonight, Yi-chun was supposed to encounter another important heroine at an underground club. A beautiful but extremely dangerous woman connected to the underworld. One of the protagonist's future harem members. Shintian still remembered her introduction scene vividly. Mostly because she tried feeding someone to sharks 10 minutes after appearing. Author. Thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. Hick. This is bullshit. Yi-chen's face was completely flushed red as he slammed another glass onto the counter. The entire underground club spun around him in circles. Music blasted loudly. Neon lights flickered overhead. Alcohol bottles littered the counter. Normally, Yi-chun could have removed all the alcohol from his body instantly using qi. But he intentionally chose not to. After seeing that social media post earlier, the one showing Ling Shuangxue walking beside Shintian in the hotel lobby, Yi-chun had completely lost his mood. His woman, walking next to another man. And not just any man, Shintian. That spoiled, rich second-generation bastard. I'll fucking get revenge. Yi-chun muttered drunkenly. I swear it under the heavens. The bartender standing nearby was already beyond annoyed. For the past half hour, Yi-chun had done nothing but drink excessively while muttering to himself like a schizophrenic cultivation protagonist. Hey man! The bartender finally sighed. I'm gonna have to cut you off. Yi-chun slowly lifted his head. His bloodshot eyes narrowed dangerously. I dare you. The bartender shrugged. All right. Then casually, he pressed a small red button hidden beneath the counter. A few seconds later, several large men immediately appeared behind Yi-chun. All of them looked like experienced thugs. Tattoos, scars, cold expressions. One of them cracked his knuckles loudly. Meanwhile, Yi-chun suddenly laughed drunkenly. Really? He slowly stood up while swaying slightly from side to side. You think these trash bags can stop me from drinking? A second later, bam! A massive fist slammed directly into Yi-chun's face. His eyes rolled backward instantly. Without even getting a chance to react, the mighty son of destiny was knocked unconscious on the spot. His limp body smacked against the counter before falling backward onto the floor. Even the bartender blinked. Damn! One of the larger thugs casually bent down, grabbed Yi-chun like a sack of potatoes, and slung him over his shoulder. Another drunk idiot, he muttered. Then the group carried Yi-chun toward a back room deeper within the underground club. The doors to the underground club suddenly opened once more. Shintian calmly stepped inside. Attention immediately shifted toward him. Women all across the club instinctively looked over. Some froze. Others openly stared. After all, nearly everyone recognized him. Young Master Shintian of the Shin family. One of country's true top-tier rich heirs. And now, with his maxed-out charm and enhanced temperament, he looked absurdly attractive. To the point several women genuinely started questioning whether he was even human anymore. One girl nearly walked directly into a table while staring at him. Shintian ignored every single one of them. After all, most of these women had body counts in the triple digits. If he wanted to have some casual sex, he'd rather fuck some high-tier actress or singer. Shoving his hands casually into his pockets, Shintian made his way deeper into the club. He narrowed his eyes slightly while recalling the original plot. The hidden entrance should be around here somewhere. According to the web novel, this underground club secretly connected to a deeper black market organization. And tonight, Yi-chun was originally supposed to encounter another heroine there. Pushing through the dancing crowd, Shintian eventually found what he was looking for. A hidden door, and standing beside it, two massive thugs with crossed arms. Both immediately glared at him the moment he approached. Shintian smiled politely. "Hello, gentlemen. Would you mind letting me through?" One thug looked down at him threateningly. "Huh? And who the hell are you supposed to be?" Shintian sighed tiredly. "Welp, guess we're doing this the violent way." Before the thug could react, Shintian suddenly threw a punch. Bang! The thug's head snapped sideways violently. Several teeth flew through the air. His enormous body collapsed instantly onto the floor unconscious. The second thug froze completely. Everything had happened so fast his brain hadn't even caught up yet. Before he could say anything, Shintian casually spoke first. "Hey, dumbass. I'm Shintian, the young master of the Shin family." The moment those words entered his ears, it was like a survival instinct suddenly activated inside the thug's brain. His face instantly turned pale. "Oh shit!" Without hesitation, he immediately bowed deeply. "Young Master Shun, I am so sorry for not recognizing you. The lights are bad in here and the music's loud and—" The thug started rambling nervously while sweating bullets. He understood one thing. Offending a young master from one of the 4 great families was basically asking to disappear mysteriously. "Enough talking," Shintian said sharply. "Just let me through, you meathead." His tone rose slightly as his patience began wearing thin. Honestly, Shintian had already noticed something about himself after gaining cultivation. He really was becoming more arrogant, not completely out of control. But the newfound strength and confidence naturally changed the way he carried himself. Still, he kept himself grounded. Because unlike those brain-dead protagonists, Shintian knew getting drunk on power early was the fastest way to die. Of course. The thug immediately sprang into action. He hurriedly opened the hidden door before respectfully gesturing inward with both hands. "Please enter, young Master Shun." Shintian ignored him completely and walked inside. The door shut behind him with a heavy thud. Immediately, Shintian found himself descending a long staircase leading deep underground. Eventually, he reached a massive hallway, and the moment he stepped inside, even Shintian paused slightly. Damn! Both sides of the hallway were made entirely of reinforced glass. Behind them, enormous walls of water stretched endlessly into darkness. Fish and exotic sea creatures swam through the massive tanks surrounding the hallway. The blue glow from the water illuminated everything. This place really does scream rich criminal organization. Huh? Shintian casually walked forward while admiring the scenery. Then suddenly, bang! A massive great white shark slammed violently against the glass beside him. The enormous predator stared directly at Shintian while circling aggressively. Then it rammed the glass again. Bang! Shintian didn't even flinch. Instead, he smirked, then casually flipped the shark off. "Can't eat me, buddy." The shark rammed the glass again aggressively. Shintian chuckled. "Maybe later I'll bring you a protagonist to snack on. He should taste pretty heavenly." For some reason, the shark became even more violent after hearing that. It repeatedly slammed against the glass while following Shintian's movement. Damn, even sharks hate protagonists. Still laughing slightly to himself, Shintian finally arrived at the very end of the hallway. Before him stood large, double black doors. According to the web novel, behind this room waited one of the heroines. A woman dangerous enough to make even the protagonist think twice before flirting with her. Shintian smiled. "All right, this should be the room." Author, thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment, and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. The moment Shintian entered, he was greeted by an enormous room. Chains hung from the ceiling like decorations. Gym equipment was scattered everywhere. Large men covered in tattoos trained throughout the room, lifting weights and beating punching bags hard enough to make the walls tremble. And directly in the center was a massive in-ground pool. Inside it lounged the woman Shintian had specifically come to find, Bai Shui. Her long, light blue hair was tied into a ponytail, slightly wet from the water. Matching blue eyes, dangerously beautiful features. A stunning figure partially submerged beneath the water while wearing a black swimsuit. A cigarette rested lazily between her lips as smoke drifted upward. And despite the cute smile on her face, the aura around her felt genuinely dangerous, like a devil pretending to be sweet. Several large men stood nervously near the edge of the pool talking to her, visibly intimidated despite their appearances. At first, nobody noticed Shintian entering, so he casually walked deeper into the room, then suddenly stopped, because near the side of the room, a certain familiar figure was currently unconscious and drooling on the floor. Ichin, one of the thugs nearby who had been carrying him earlier, just dropped him like discarded trash. Shintian stared at the scene for several seconds, then burst out laughing. "You seriously can't make this shit up." The moment his voice echoed throughout the room, every head instantly turned toward him. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Bai Shui slowly narrowed her beautiful eyes. Taking the cigarette out of her mouth with wet fingers, she tilted her head slightly. "Shintian." Her voice sounded soft and cute, but beneath that sweetness was something terrifying. "The young master of the Shin family?" Her gaze slowly swept over him, then paused briefly. "Why is a handsome boy like you in my territory?" The surrounding men immediately began approaching Shintian cautiously. In response, Shintian calmly raised both hands. "Wow, what a warm welcome. Boss Bai really surrounds herself with polite gentlemen." Bai Shui's eyes widened slightly, because once again, she heard a voice, yet Shintian's lips had never moved. Immediately, she raised one hand lazily. "Stop!" The men instantly froze. "Don't touch him, you idiots." Bai Shui rested her chin lightly against her hand while floating near the edge of the pool. "He is, after all, young Master Shin." Then her beautiful eyes locked onto him more carefully. "Interesting." She lightly swam closer before lazily resting herself against the pool's edge. "I'd like to speak with you alone." Shintian lowered his hands. "That's exactly what I was hoping for." The surrounding men immediately bowed slightly before leaving without hesitation. Even Yi Chun was dragged farther away into another room. Soon, only Shintian and Bai Shui remained. Then, to Bai Shui's surprise, Shintian casually removed his shirt, socks, and shoes. "Wet socks is a curse." He began walking toward the pool. Immediately, Bai Shui pushed herself backward through the water slightly. "I wouldn't come in here," she warned playfully. Shintian smiled daringly. "Don't worry, I'm not very tasty." Bai Shui let out a cute giggle. "So you already know there are sharks in the water." Her gaze drifted downward. Below the surface, several bull sharks silently swam beneath them, some close enough to touch, others disappearing into the darker depths below. Yet Shintian stepped into the water anyway without hesitation. Of course, water slowly rose around him as he entered the pool. "I did extensive research on you beforehand, Boss Bai." That was complete bullshit. Everything he knew came directly from reading the web novel. "So," Bai Shui slowly swam closer through the water. "Why exactly can I hear your inner voice?" Her tone remained cute and playful, yet Shintian could clearly feel the danger hidden beneath it. A woman like Bai Shui didn't survive in the underground world by being harmless. As she reached his side, she casually pressed herself against his arm, her soft body brushing lightly against him beneath the water. Instead of becoming flustered, Shintian simply wrapped one arm around her waist and pulled her closer. That actually caught Bai Shui off guard for a brief moment. Still, she quickly returned to her usual cute demeanor. "Well?" Bai Shui asked while blinking innocently. "Are you going to explain?" Shintian sighed lightly. "That's complicated." He looked directly into her eyes. "The simplest explanation is this. You're inside a web novel, and you're one of the heroines destined to join the protagonist's harem." The atmosphere instantly became quieter. Bai Shui's beautiful eyes flickered slightly, because while the words sounded insane, when she looked into Shintian's eyes, she saw absolutely no hesitation, no deception, no joking intent. Leaning closer, Bai Shui whispered softly near his ear. "So, are you saying you're the protagonist? And I'm supposed to join your harem?" Shintian lightly pressed a finger against her lips. Unfortunately for you, a faint smirk appeared on his face. I'm just a villain. Then his gaze sharpened slightly. But I highly doubt someone like you wants to become one man's collectible trophy. You don't seem like the type to obediently share a husband with 9 other women. Bai Shui quietly stared at him for several seconds. Then, well, a playful smile slowly appeared. If it was you, maybe. She casually removed the cigarette from her mouth and flicked it into the water. Almost instantly, a bull shark burst upward and swallowed it whole before disappearing back beneath the surface. Bai Shui didn't even glance at it. But, her tone slowly became colder. I have zero interest in joining the harem of some pathetic man. As she spoke, she lightly moved one arm beneath the water, intentionally emphasizing her chest slightly. Then she narrowed her eyes. Though honestly, it's still hard to believe we're supposedly inside some web novel. I can tell you're not lying. But there's also a possibility you're just completely insane. Shintian looked upward toward the ceiling. Honestly, he expected this reaction. Trying to convince someone their entire reality was fictional sounded absolutely ridiculous. So instead of arguing, he simply spoke calmly. You have a mole on your inner thigh. Bai Shui blinked once. Then Shintian added, right beside your bikini line. The atmosphere instantly froze. Splash. Bai Shui immediately pushed herself away from him. And for the first time, the cute, playful act vanished completely. What replaced it was the real Bai Shui. Cold, dangerous, terrifying. Her voice became sharp like venom. How do you know that? An invisible pressure filled the room. Because no man had ever seen that part of her body before. Hell, this was the first time she had ever willingly touched a man this intimately. Yet Shintian looked completely calm. He simply shrugged. Well, I told you already. I know basically everything. After all, I've read the web novel we're currently inside. Then Shintian casually added, I also know your bedroom is secretly filled with cute girly stuff. Pink blankets, stuffed animals, and that shark plushie you sleep with. Bai Shui's face instantly lost color. Author, thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. If you're still not convinced, Shintian said calmly, I can tell you other things. Things about your future. Or maybe, a faint smirk appeared on his face. Something involving your precious underground organization. Bai Shui's pupils instantly shrank slightly. However, her expression quickly returned to normal. The embarrassment and anger from earlier disappeared as though they had never existed. Instead, she smoothly swam back toward Shintian with a cute smile on her face again. Oh! Her tone became sweet and playful. Then why don't you tell me, handsome boy? Shintian opened his mouth. Well, bang! The massive doors behind them suddenly exploded open. A thug came flying through the air screaming before crashing directly into the pool. The moment he hit the water, the sharks instantly went into a frenzy. Blood spread everywhere. The man was dragged beneath the surface before he could even finish screaming. Shintian and Bai Shui both turned toward the entrance at the exact same time. Then immediately understood one thing. Get out of the water. Shintian reacted first. With his newly enhanced body, he easily pulled himself out of the pool. Meanwhile, Bai Shui attempted to climb up as well. But her wet hands suddenly slipped against the edge. Her body nearly fell backward toward the water again. A hand instantly grabbed her wrist. Before Bai Shui could react, Shintian pulled her directly into his embrace. Water dripped from both of them as Bai Shui instinctively grabbed onto his chest slightly to steady herself. Thank you. For once, her voice lacked its usual playful confidence. Behind them, the sharks suddenly became even more violent. Water exploded upward as they frantically tore apart the body that had fallen in earlier. It was then, a figure slowly stepped forward. Ichin. His clothes were messy, his expression dark. Behind him, every thug had already been beaten half to death. Some groaned on the floor. Others had stopped moving entirely. Then Yichin finally looked up. and saw the scene before him. Shintian standing there shirtless, holding a beauty in his arms. For a brief moment, Ichen's entire face twisted violently. Veins bulged on his forehead. His eyes turned bloodshot. The atmosphere instantly became murderous. At the exact same time, a notification suddenly echoed inside Shintian's mind. Ding! Host has successfully angered the protagonist. Yi-chun has lost 100 fate value. Remaining fate value, 9,900. Shintian's eyes immediately lit up. Are you serious? That's all it took, he muttered to himself. Ichen's face twitched violently. Seeing Shintian with yet another beautiful woman felt like someone repeatedly stabbing his pride with a rusty knife. Just moments ago, he had been waking up in a back room surrounded by thugs touching him in his special places, and now he walked in only to see his greatest enemy holding another gorgeous woman in his arms. The sheer emotional whiplash almost made him cough blood. How is this fair? Aren't I better than this guy? Why are these women sticking to him instead of me? In rage, Yi-chun kicked another unconscious thug's body away. The man flew several meters before slamming into a punching bag. Bang! I should be the one pressing against those giant boobs. Hearing his inner thoughts, Bai Shui slowly turned her head toward Yi-chun. Boy, she said sweetly, I think you should leave my establishment. Then her eyes narrowed slightly. And you'll also be paying for all the damage you caused. Yi-chun immediately forced his anger back down. His expression instantly shifted back into his usual righteous look. Miss, he said calmly while straightening his clothes. My name is Yi-chun. I woke up trapped inside one of these suspicious rooms. His gaze became serious. Don't worry. I'll take you out of this dangerous place safely. Silence. Pfft. Shintian instantly burst out laughing before quickly covering his mouth. Honestly, he couldn't help it. The protagonist was seriously standing in front of the literal underground boss of this entire establishment, and warning her that her own territory was dangerous. It was like trying to rescue a shark from the ocean. Bai Shui's smile slowly vanished. Then she raised one delicate middle finger toward Yi-chun. I'll give you 10 seconds before I personally deal with you myself. Yi-chun blinked. A lewd smile slowly spread across his face. Wait, does she want me to deal with her in 10 seconds? His eyes instinctively drifted toward her raised finger. Holy shit, she's inviting me. Does she want to have sex with me after this? What a woman! Bai Shui immediately face-bombed. For the first time in years, she genuinely felt exhausted talking to someone. Meanwhile, Shintian was enjoying the entire show immensely. He also knew something important. The protagonist's patience was about to snap completely. And once Yi-chun moved, things would get messy fast. So without hesitation, Shintian suddenly reached down and casually cupped Bai Shui's chest. Soft, warm, perfectly fitting in his hand. Bai Shui's body instantly stiffened slightly in shock. Then Shintian looked directly at Yi-chun and smirked. Sorry, little bro. She's mine. Even Yi-chun couldn't take it anymore. A surge of emotional pain welled up in his chest as he suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. His eyes widening in disbelief at the sight before him. Shintian's hand resting so casually on his woman. Yes, in his heart he had already claimed this beauty as his. That bastard! Yi-chun's fists trembled violently, veins bulging along his arms. I want him dead. How many green hats will he put on me? He dares. He dares to touch my woman in front of me? A faint smirk tugged at Shintian's lips as the system's voice rang out in his mind. Host has successfully angered the protagonist. Yi-chun has lost 100 fate value. Remaining fate value, 9,800. Author. Thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. Bai Shui, listen to me. Shintian's inner voice suddenly echoed inside her mind. Bai Shui glanced upward slightly. What I'm about to do is going to piss you off. But trust me. For once, Shintian's tone lacked any joking intent. It sounded completely serious. Bai Shui instinctively glanced toward Yichun. The moment she did, she saw his eyes. Greedy, possessive, almost twitching from jealousy and rage. Like a starving wolf staring at prey. Honestly, it disgusted her. So after a brief hesitation, she quietly whispered, "I'll trust you." The moment Yichun saw Bai Shui whispering intimately toward Shintian, his rationality finally snapped. "You bastard!" He launched himself forward like a human missile. His chi exploded outward. Yichun genuinely wanted to kill Shintian. Just as Yichun reached them, Shintian suddenly moved. Using chi, he subtly enhanced his body and stepped aside at the perfect angle. He grabbed Bai Shui, then threw her directly toward the massive shark-filled pool. Yichun's eyes widened instantly. "You coward!" Without hesitation, he completely ignored Shintian and changed direction mid-charge. To Yichun, this was clearly Shintian trying to kill Bai Shui after realizing he couldn't win. So naturally, the heroic protagonist had to save the beauty. Yichun immediately leapt into the air toward Bai Shui. Bai Shui intentionally widened her eyes and put on a terrified expression. For a brief moment, she genuinely looked like a helpless beauty moments away from death. The instant Yichun got close, Bai Shui smiled. Her body suddenly twisted gracefully midair. Instead of falling into the water, she landed effortlessly on the opposite side of the pool. Yichun froze. Ha! Bam! Bai Shui's kick slammed directly into Yichun's stomach. The force sent him flying straight downward into the shark-filled water below. Splash! The water exploded violently. Meanwhile, Shintian instantly ran over, grabbed Bai Shui into a princess carry, and turned toward the exit. "We're leaving." Bai Shui blinked, then immediately protested while pointing back toward the pool excitedly. "But I wanted to watch Sir Snuggle Chompers eat him." Shintian rolled his eyes. "We're not waiting around for protagonist bullshit." Without slowing down, he carried her straight out the back exit. Inside the pool, Yichun resurfaced while coughing violently. For a moment, genuine pain flashed across his face. Being betrayed by the woman he tried to save honestly hurt him emotionally. A second later, realization suddenly hit him. "I understand now." His eyes sharpened. "She did that to protect me." From Bai Shui's perspective, Shintian was just a terrifying rich young master from one of the 4 great families. Naturally, she wouldn't dare openly oppose him. That has to be it. Yichun instantly convinced himself of this explanation. Before he could continue thinking, several massive shark fins suddenly appeared around him. Yichun slowly looked around. Shit. Once outside, Shintian finally put Bai Shui down. The moment her feet touched the ground, she crossed her arms and pouted slightly. "Why couldn't we stay and watch the sharks eat him?" She sounded genuinely disappointed. After all, she had been extremely curious about whether her beloved pet sharks would successfully devour that lustful idiot. Shintian glanced back toward the exit before sighing. "Well, he's the protagonist. This level of nonsense won't kill him." Bai Shui raised an eyebrow slightly, then quickly shifted topics again. "Fine. What about the future thing involving my organization?" Shintian scratched the back of his head lazily. "Can we talk about it while eating? I'm starving." Without waiting for a response, he began walking toward the roadside where his vehicle was parked. Bai Shui immediately followed behind him while puffing her cheeks out cutely. "You're such a tease." Then she naturally hooked her arm around his. Leaning against him slightly, she smiled upward. "You know, if that bastard kills any of my sharks, I'll be very angry." Shintian let out a weak laugh. "Well, you might want to mentally prepare yourself to buy new sharks." Bai Shui's cute expression instantly darkened. "That bastard should just get eaten instead." Shintian simply shrugged. Reaching the vehicle, he opened the passenger side door for her. Bai Shui entered smoothly, before Shintian followed into the back seat beside her. Then he looked toward the front. "Drive us to DuckDonald's." The personal driver froze. Young master?" He glanced at the rearview mirror nervously. "Did I hear you correctly?" Shintian narrowed his eyes slightly. "Don't question me." The driver instantly straightened up. Yes, yes, young master. The vehicle immediately started moving. Meanwhile, the mercenary bodyguards entered a second black vehicle and followed closely behind. Inside the car, Bai Shui quietly stared out the window as city lights passed by. Then she suddenly looked toward Shintian curiously. Shouldn't we get dressed properly first? She looked down at her own body. I'm wearing a swimsuit and you don't even have a shirt on. Shintian casually leaned back against the seat. Meh, it's fine. We'll go through the drive-thru. Suddenly, bump, the car hit a rough patch in the road. Because she hadn't put on her seatbelt, Bai Shui instantly lost balance and fell directly sideways, right into Shintian's lap. Her face pressed against something firm beneath his wet pants. Bai Shui blinked once in confusion, then casually asked, Hey, how big is your phone? Silence filled the car. Even the personal driver in the front froze slightly. Meanwhile, Shintian slowly covered his face with one hand. I'd really appreciate it, he said tiredly, if you waited for a more private place before grabbing my dick. The moment those words registered, Bai Shui's entire face instantly turned bright red. She shot upright so fast that she nearly hit her head on the roof of the car. And no, I wasn't. For once, the dangerous underground boss completely lost her composure. Even after sitting back properly, her eyes kept unconsciously drifting downward, because the outline beneath Shintian's still wet pants was extremely visible. Very visible. Concerningly visible. Bai Shui immediately looked away again, then looked back, then away again. Her brain entered complete chaos. Why is it that big? That's unreasonable. Meanwhile, Shintian lazily leaned back against the seat with an exhausted expression. Yep. That reaction is about what I expected. Bai Shui's face instantly became even redder after hearing his inner voice. You! She pointed at him angrily. Yet, after several seconds, she couldn't even finish the sentence. Because honestly, she didn't even know what to say anymore. Author. Thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. With one hand gripping the edge of the pool, Yi-chun slowly pulled himself out of the blood-red water. Several dead sharks floated behind him. Some had shattered skulls. Others had been torn apart by violent bursts of chi. Yi-chun remained completely silent. Too silent. Water dripped from his soaked clothes as he slowly lowered his head. He looked downward. A second later, his face twisted violently, because below his waist, something was missing. No! Yi-chun's hands trembled slightly. No, 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 no. He immediately circulated chi throughout his body, desperately stopping the bleeding while sealing damaged nerves and blood vessels with cultivation techniques. Thankfully, as a cultivator, he wouldn't immediately die from blood loss. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was, his little brother was gone. For the first time in his entire life, pure terror appeared on Yi-chun's face. Slowly, he turned toward the shark-filled pool. Then his expression became demonic. Without another word, Yi-chun jumped back into the water. One by one, he began dragging the dead sharks onto the floor. Thud, thud, thud. Their massive corpses lined up beside each other like victims at a butcher shop. Then Yi-chun began cutting them open frantically. Blood and organs splattered everywhere. His hands shook harder and harder as panic consumed him. Where is it? Where is it? Finally, after ripping open another shark, Yi-chun froze. There it was, half chewed, covered in blood. His precious little brother. For several seconds, Yi-chun simply stared at it silently, then slowly fell to his knees. Tears began streaming down his face. The mighty son of destiny looked like a man whose entire worldview had collapsed. Carefully holding the injured remains with trembling hands, Yi-chun's body shook with overwhelming grief and rage. Shintian. His voice sounded hoarse. This is all your fault. His bloodshot eyes slowly lifted upward. I swear to the heavens. I will kill you. I will destroy your entire family. A terrifying killing intent exploded outward violently. Yichen slowly stood back up, with the expression of a man who had lost everything. He carefully placed his precious little brother into his wet pocket. Thankfully, with cultivation techniques and medical arts, reattachment was still possible. However, after glancing downward briefly, Yichen's face twitched violently again, because unfortunately, he had clearly lost some length in the process. Shin Tan. Host has successfully angered the protagonist. Yichen has lost 2,000 fate value. Remaining fate value, 7,800. Hearing the system, Shintian honestly didn't know what to say. He had barely done anything yet. He hadn't fully stolen Yichen's women, hadn't slept with them, hadn't even kissed them, and he hadn't started stealing the protagonist's major opportunities or treasures either. Yet simply angering Yichen repeatedly had already caused him to lose a shocking amount of fate value. Honestly, Shintian wasn't about to complain. The faster Yichen lost fate, the better. This is good. Shintian was currently in an extremely good mood while eating a burger and chicken nuggets. Bai Shui looked completely different from her terrifying underground boss persona. Her eyes sparkled brightly while she aggressively attacked a large pile of chicken nuggets. At the same time, she happily sipped on a massive milkshake. She looked absolutely obsessed. "Hey!" Shintian said while chewing casually. "Slow down. At this rate you're gonna get fat." Bai Shui immediately let out an offended humph. Her cheeks puffed slightly as she looked away while still stuffing nuggets into her mouth. "Impossible!" She swallowed dramatically before proudly showing off her figure slightly. "Whenever I gain weight, it all goes into my chest, thighs, and butt." Her tone sounded incredibly smug. Shintian immediately laughed. "Lucky you." Without hesitation, he casually placed a hand onto her thigh and squeezed lightly. "Wow." He raised an eyebrow. "You really are soft like jelly." Feeling his hand on her thigh made Bai Shui blush faintly. She didn't stop him, partly because he had saved her life earlier, and because, well, he was ridiculously handsome. Life really was unfair for unattractive people. Eventually, Bai Shui finished swallowing the rest of her nuggets before immediately leaning backward again excitedly. Anyways, seeing Shintian finally done eating, her eyes lit up. "Can you tell me about my future now? What happens to my organization?" Shintian casually wiped his hands clean with a napkin. Then, after glancing toward the front seat, he pressed a button and rolled up the privacy divider between the driver and the back seats. He didn't trust his driver not to listen in. Once the divider fully closed, Shintian leaned back comfortably. "Alright, you wanted to know what happens to your organization, right?" Bai Shui immediately nodded seriously. The playful expression from earlier disappeared completely. Shintian rubbed his chin slightly while organizing his thoughts. "Well, after joining Yichen's harem, things start going downhill for your underground force." Bai Shui frowned instantly. "What do you mean?" Shintian sighed. "Yichen treats your men like disposable cannon fodder. He constantly throws them into dangerous situations as human shields while handling his own enemies. And because of that, most of your trusted subordinates eventually die because of him." The atmosphere inside the car became colder. Bai Shui's fingers slowly tightened slightly. Shintian continued calmly. "And once your manpower weakens, rival underground organizations begin taking your territory piece by piece. You eventually beg Yichen for help." Bai Shui's eyes narrowed dangerously. "And what does he do?" Shintian laughed dryly. "He says he's too busy cultivating. He was trying to save the grandfather of another heroine at the time, and he promised he'd help reclaim your territory later." A brief pause followed. "But, about 900 chapters later, the author completely forgot your underground plotline existed." Silence. Shintian coughed lightly. "I mean, the protagonist forgot about it. And your entire organization basically disappeared from the story forever." Bai Shui slowly placed one hand against her chest. Her expression looked genuinely shaken. "So, if I got involved with that man, I would have lost everything I built. Shintian gave a half nod. Yep, it was honestly pretty brutal. Bai Shui immediately clenched her fists. No. Her tone became cold. I refuse to let that happen. Then she grabbed Shintian's sleeve. So how do we kill him? I don't even want to imagine that future. Seeing her reaction, Shintian rested a finger under his chin thoughtfully. Well, first rule, don't go near Yi-chan alone. Second, his eyes met hers calmly. Stay close to me. Third, we need to gather all the heroines onto our side. We cut off his emotional support, resources, opportunities, and growth stage before he fully develops. As Shintian continued explaining his plans, Bai Shui had already stopped listening, because her mind became completely stuck on one sentence. Stay close to me. Hearing those words made her heart feel strangely warm. Slowly, Bai Shui closed her eyes for a brief moment, then quietly muttered, All right, I'll marry you. Shintian instantly stopped talking. Ha! Even he looked caught off guard. He didn't mean it that way, at all. Yet, after seeing Bai Shui's serious expression, Shintian ultimately didn't reject her either, because from a strategic perspective, the more heroines emotionally sided with him, the weaker the protagonist became. And besides, unlike Yi-chan, Shintian knew he could keep a harem functional without turning everyone into neglected background decorations. Author, thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment, and review truly helps support the novel, and the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. Before Shintian could properly respond to Bai Shui's sudden marriage declaration, a phone suddenly began vibrating non-stop from behind the front passenger seat. BZZZZ. BZZZZ. BZZZZZ. It sounded less like a normal phone notification and more like someone trying to launch a cyber attack. Shintian frowned slightly before reaching over and pulling out the phone. He had left it inside the car earlier. The moment he unlocked it, dozens of unread messages instantly flooded the screen. Almost all of them were from Ling Shuangxue. Shintian immediately felt a headache coming. Ling Shuangxue. Hey, are you going to message me or not? Ling Shuangxue. You literally said you would follow up. Ling Shuangxue. Oh? Ling Shuangxue. Are you ignoring me? Several angry emojis followed. Then eventually, the later messages became calmer. Ling Shuangxue. Damn. Ling Shuangxue. Being ignored actually hurts more than I expected. Sad emoji. Seeing the messages, Shintian sighed softly before finally typing back. Shuntan. Sorry. I was dealing with something important. Shuntan. This kind of conversation is better in person anyway. Shuntan. We'll plan a time later. Shuntan. I'm busy with someone right now. The typing bubble instantly appeared. Ling Shuangxue. Who? Ling Shuangxue. Are you with another woman? Knife emoji. Dark smile emoji. Shintian immediately smirked. Shuntan. Yeah. Shuntan. Don't tell me you're jealous. Laughing emoji. A full 20 seconds passed before the next reply came. Ling Shuangxue. Who would be jealous because of you? Ling Shuangxue. Forget it. Ling Shuangxue. I'm going to sleep. Shintian chuckled before sending one final message. Shuntan. Alright. Shuntan. I'll contact you when I have time to meet in person. Salute emoji. After putting the phone down, Shintian suddenly heard soft laughter beside him. Bai Shui was openly leaning over him, reading everything without even pretending to hide it. Covering her mouth slightly, she let out a cute giggle. You're pretty funny. Then her beautiful blue eyes narrowed teasingly. So, is that iceberg goddess Ling Shuangxue already under your control? Shintian smirked lazily. Yeah. Then he glanced sideways toward her. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't mess things up for me. No pointless fighting between women. Bai Shui immediately grinned, showing her sharp little canine teeth slightly. Don't worry. She casually leaned against his shoulder. I can share a capable man just fine. Then her gaze slowly swept over Shintian again, especially his chest and arms. And besides, a playful smile appeared on her face. I can tell you're strong. Shintian immediately laughed. Suddenly, the car slowly came to a stop. A light knock sounded from the front seat. Shintian pressed a button, lowering the privacy divider slightly. Yes. The personal driver straightened nervously. Young master, we've arrived at Miss Bai's residence. Shintian glanced out the window briefly before looking toward Bai Shui. Well, this is your stop. Then his expression became slightly more serious. Stay in contact with me. Without hesitation, he handed her his phone. Put your number in. Bai Shui immediately smiled brightly. Taking the phone from him, she quickly entered her contact information before saving it. Then she handed the phone back while narrowing her eyes teasingly. You better not ignore me like you ignored that frozen blockhead. Then after a short pause, she added smugly. Poor little Ling Shuangxue was practically begging for attention. Shintian laughed before casually patting her head. No promises. I'm a busy man. Bai Shui puffed her cheeks slightly. Excuses. Still, she didn't seem genuinely upset. Opening the car door, Bai Shui stepped outside before turning back around. Streetlights illuminated her beautiful figure softly as she smiled toward him. She suddenly blew him a kiss. All right then, I'll see you later. Her eyes curved playfully. Husband. She intentionally emphasized the last word. Even the personal driver in the front nearly choked after hearing it. Meanwhile, Shintian simply leaned against the seat while shaking his head helplessly. Bai Shui giggled before finally turning around and walking toward her residence. A few moments later, she disappeared inside. The car began to drive away. Shintian looked out the window toward the night sky. Inside one of the Shin family's countless mansions, Shintian lay spread out across his enormous bed, looking absolutely exhausted. At this point, the sun was practically about to rise. Despite being a cultivator now, he was still only at the lowest realm. Sure, Foundation establishment gave him more everything than normal people. But tonight had been complete insanity. Transmigration, system, inner voice, fighting, sharks, McDonald's, an attempted protagonist murder, and somehow gaining 2 future wives in the span of one night. Honestly, his brain was fried. System, Shintian muttered tiredly while staring at the ceiling. Yes, host. Did I get any rewards for screwing over the protagonist's fate tonight? Yes. The host currently has 1 unclaimed reward. Shintian's tired eyes immediately opened slightly. Then claim it. He yawned heavily. A blue holographic panel appeared before him. Congratulations, host. Reward obtained. Divine level singing. Shintian felt a strange sensation spread throughout his throat and lungs. His breathing became smoother, lighter, cleaner. Even the way air flowed through his body felt completely different. Oh, curious. Shintian slowly sat up on the bed, then casually started singing. There lived a certain man in Russia long ago. The moment the words left his mouth, Shintian froze, because his voice sounded absolutely heavenly. Rich, smooth, perfectly controlled. Every note carried flawless emotion and resonance. He was big and strong, in his eyes a flaming glow. Even the room itself seemed to become quieter from how absurdly good his singing sounded. Most people looked at him with terror and with fear. Shintian stopped halfway through the verse. Silence filled the room. Then slowly, he touched his throat. Holy shit! He genuinely looked shocked. That wasn't just good. That was terrifyingly good. To the point where even he got briefly lost listening to himself sing. He honestly felt like he sounded better than the original singer by an unreasonable amount. This system is ridiculous. Shintian let out a deep yawn before slowly closing his eyes. After making sure his alarm was set, he slipped under the blanket and quickly drifted off to sleep, knowing he had another long day ahead of him tomorrow. Zzz. The next morning, beep, 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 ugh. Shintian groaned while blindly reaching across the bed. After fumbling around for several seconds, he finally grabbed his phone and shut the alarm off. For a moment he simply lay there, staring at the ceiling. Then his eyes slowly narrowed. A missed call. Looking at the screen, Shintian blinked slightly. My mother called me? Without thinking much about it, Shintian immediately called back. The phone was picked up almost instantly. My dearest son. A cheerful female voice immediately went through the phone. Good morning. Did my precious baby sleep well last night? Shintian slowly sat up while rubbing his eyes tiredly. Yes, mother. I'm about to get ready for the day. A loud, offended humph came through the speaker. Hey, I'm mommy, not mother. Shintian rolled his eyes while getting out of bed. Right? Sorry. Only then did the woman sound satisfied again. Meanwhile, Shintian entered the bathroom, set the phone nearby, and began brushing his teeth. On the other end of the call, his mother suddenly spoke again. Anyway, remember you have to attend the grand party tonight as the Shin family's young master. Shintian spat out toothpaste before rinsing his mouth. I know. I won't be late. Good. His mother immediately sounded happy again. All right then. Love you. Have a good day. Shintian smiled faintly. Goodbye, mother. His expression gradually became thoughtful, because he knew exactly what party his mother was talking about. In the original web novel, tonight's banquet was one of the major early story events. A massive gathering attended by nearly every elite/rich family within the city, all hosted to celebrate the 100th birthday of a certain old man. More specifically, the grandfather of another heroine. And during the banquet, that same grandfather would suddenly suffer a heart attack. Then Yi-chan would step forward dramatically, save him with his so-called medical skills, and gain a special connection. Shintian stared quietly at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Slowly, a grin spread across his face. Yet what they don't know. His voice was low, almost amused. His so-called medical skills shaved 2 full years off the old man's lifespan, just to force him back on his feet and show off. A pause. I don't think a certain heroine is going to appreciate that. Author, thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment and review truly helps support the novel, and the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. Fresh out of the shower and dressed in clean clothes, Shintian walked into a massive garage with a donut in his mouth. Rows upon rows of luxury cars filled the enormous space. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royces, Aston Martins, limited edition hypercars most people would only ever see online. Shintian slowly looked around while tapping his chin thoughtfully. Which one should I take? Since the banquet wasn't until tonight, he still had the entire day free. And honestly, he had no intention of wasting it. The more fate value he stripped from Yi-chan early on, the easier things would become later. Eventually, Shintian stopped in front of a black Bugatti Chiron. Yep, this one. A few moments later, he climbed inside and started the engine. The deep roar of the vehicle echoed beautifully throughout the garage. Just as Shintian was about to drive off, his phone suddenly rang. Glancing at the caller ID, he raised an eyebrow slightly. Ling Shuangxue. Shintian picked up immediately while fastening his seatbelt. The call connected. What's up? He instantly noticed something. Ling Shuangxue sounded irritated. Very irritated. Where are you right now? She asked coldly. Shintian slowly backed the Bugatti out of its parking spot. In my garage. About to head out. Then he narrowed his eyes slightly. Why? Ling Shuangxue let out a frustrated sigh on the other end. Yi-chan is my bodyguard again. Shintian's eyebrows immediately rose. What? I thought you fired him. I did. Her tone instantly became more annoyed. But my father threatened to pull his investments out of my company if I removed him. And if my company loses the Ling family's backing, other investors will panic and leave too. Ling Shuangxue sounded genuinely frustrated. I'm trapped right now. Shintian slowly smirked while pulling out of the mansion driveway. Is Yi-chan with you right now? He's outside my office. My secretary is keeping him occupied for the moment. Hearing that, Shintian's smile widened slightly. Interesting. Then he casually shifted gears. All right, I'll head over. A brief pause followed. Then Ling Shuangxue's tone subtly softened. Really? For the first time since the call started, she sounded slightly happier. She genuinely wanted to see him. Yep, Shin Tian replied casually. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Before she could respond again, he hung up, then immediately accelerated onto the road. The Bugatti roared through the city like a black beast. Seeing the call end, Ling Shuangxue slowly lowered her phone. Without realizing it, she lightly pressed it against her chest while spinning once in her office chair. A faint smile almost appeared on her face. Her heartbeat had even sped up slightly. 30 minutes. For some reason, just hearing Shin Tian say he was coming over made her mood improve considerably. That pleasant feeling vanished instantly. Knock knock. Boss. A tired female voice came from outside the office. I can't stop him anymore. The door slowly cracked open as Ling Shuangshue's secretary peeked her head inside with an exhausted expression. Ling Shuangxue immediately sighed. Just let him in. The secretary looked relieved beyond words. Yes, boss. She fully opened the door before stepping aside. The moment Yichen walked inside, his eyes immediately locked onto the secretary's backside. Damn. Maybe it's just a cupcake, but honestly all cake is edible. Ling Shuangshue's expression instantly darkened. Disgust rose in her chest again. This man truly had no shame whatsoever. Go sit in the corner, she said coldly. And behave. I need to work. Yichun immediately straightened proudly and gave a salute. Of course, young miss. Then, without hesitation, he happily walked toward the corner chair and sat down obediently, almost like a large, overexcited dog. Or more accurately, a cuck chair enthusiast. Ling Shuangxue rubbed her temple tiredly. Meanwhile, Yichun began casually whistling to himself while sitting there. The sound instantly made Ling Shuangxue stop reviewing documents. Can you stop that? Yichun blinked innocently. The whistling, Ling Shuangxue said coldly. It's annoying. Oh. Yichun immediately stopped. Meanwhile, the secretary standing nearby looked increasingly confused. Because honestly, no matter how she looked at it, this man seemed completely unqualified to serve as the personal bodyguard of this famous iceberg CEO. His clothes looked cheap, his behavior lacked class, and his eyes constantly wandered around the room like a starving stray dog. How did this guy even get hired? Yichun noticed the secretary glance at him briefly. A smug smile spread across his face. Another woman falls for me just by looking at my perfect body. The confidence in his inner voice was overwhelming. Then, trying to appear attractive, Yichun suddenly adjusted his sitting posture dramatically. One leg crossed, arms stretched outward, chest puffed slightly. Instead of looking seductive, he looked like a man trying way too hard. To make things even worse, he suddenly spat a little saliva onto his palm before slicking back his hair. Ling Shuangxue, secretary? Both women immediately looked physically ill. The secretary quickly lowered her head to hide her expression. Ling Shuangxue genuinely felt her soul taking damage. I can't take this anymore. Still, she forced herself to continue reviewing documents while completely ignoring Yichen's existence. And so, 30 painful minutes slowly passed. Finally, buzz. Ling Shuangshue's phone vibrated. Glancing downward, her cold eyes instantly softened slightly. It was a message from Shin Tian. I'm here. Without hesitation, Ling Shuangxue immediately stood up from her chair. The movement was so fast it startled her secretary slightly. Boss! Ling Shuangxue grabbed her phone and calmly walked toward the office door. Come with me. The secretary immediately followed behind. Naturally, Yichun also stood up and followed after them like an obedient dog. So where are we going? He asked curiously. Ling Shuangxue ignored him completely. The three entered the elevator together before descending toward the first floor. Once the doors opened, Ling Shuangxue immediately walked through the company lobby toward the front entrance. And there, standing outside beside a black Bugatti, was Shin Tian. One hand casually rested in his pocket while the other held a bouquet of flowers. Leaning against the car, he looked absurdly handsome beneath the daylight. The moment Ling Shuangxue saw him, Her mood visibly improved. On the other hand, Yi Chen's expression instantly twisted into pure rage as he subconsciously covered his crotch. After painfully reattaching it himself, the once heaven-defying dragon was now reduced to a tragic 2-inch little ant below the heavens. And Xintian's appearance only brought those traumatic memories back. Why is this bastard here? Yi Chen nearly gritted his teeth into powder. This demon, this monster, this thief of manhood. Author, thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment, and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. Flowers? For me? Ling Shuangshua's voice softened slightly. A faint blush even appeared across her usually icy face. The sight instantly stunned everyone nearby. Employees entering and leaving the company all froze. Several people secretly took out their phones and started snapping photos. Even Ling Shuangshua's secretary felt slightly jealous seeing the scene. Who wouldn't want an absurdly rich, tall, handsome man showing up with flowers? Meanwhile, Xintian simply smiled calmly. I made sure these were grown personally in my family's private garden. He took a step closer before gently offering the bouquet to her. Ling Shuangshua's heart softened slightly seeing the gesture. Right as she reached out, a figure suddenly rushed forward. Smack! The bouquet was violently slapped onto the ground. Flower petals scattered everywhere. Everyone froze. Yi Chen stood there angrily with a righteous expression. Those flowers could have been poisoned, he declared loudly. As if that wasn't enough, he stepped directly onto the flowers, crushing them beneath his shoe. The surrounding crowd immediately began whispering. Even nearby employees looked horrified. Ling Shuangshue completely froze, then slowly looked downward at the ruined bouquet. For some reason, seeing the flowers destroyed genuinely hurt her. She had barely even received gifts like this before, and Xintian had clearly put thought into them. Yet now, they were crushed on the ground. Something inside her instantly snapped. Slap! Ling Shuangshue backhanded Yi Chen across the face so hard that his head turned sideways. You bastard! Her voice trembled with anger. Those were my flowers. Without waiting for his response, she angrily marched toward the car. Xintian calmly opened the passenger door for her like a gentleman. Before getting inside, Ling Shuangshue shot Yi Chen one final icy glare. Meanwhile, Xintian glanced toward Yi Chen and sighed. Good job, retard. The surrounding employees all glared at Yi Chen. Even the secretary looked extremely displeased with Yi Chen now. This entire situation just looked like someone stomping on romance itself. And from her perspective, her boss and Xintian genuinely looked perfect together. Meanwhile, Yi Chen's face twitched violently. The slap hurt, but the emotional damage hurt far more. Xintian then casually walked around toward the driver's side. Yi Chen hurriedly tried opening the passenger door. Locked. He immediately knocked against the glass. Young miss, you can't leave alone with another man. Then shamelessly added, your father will be furious if he finds out. Hearing her father brought up instantly worsened Ling Shuangshue's mood again. She narrowed her cold eyes. Then follow behind us. Her tone was icy. My secretary can drive you. Then after glancing at him briefly, she added, because I'm assuming you don't even have a driver's license. Yi Chen instantly let out an awkward laugh. Ha. His silence basically confirmed it. The secretary immediately rolled her eyes. Meanwhile, Xintian turned on the car, then casually looked toward Ling Shuangshue with a grin. All right, let's get this date started. The moment he said the word, date, Ling Shuangshue's face instantly became even redder. Yi Chen almost fainted from anger outside the vehicle. You! At the exact same time, the system echoed inside Xintian's mind. Ding! Host has successfully angered the protagonist. Yi Chen has lost 100 fate value. Remaining fate value, 7,700. Xintian's smile widened slightly. The Bugatti roared before speeding off into traffic. Yi Chen immediately panicked. Wait! He turned and sprinted toward the secretary's vehicle at full speed. We have to hurry. The secretary had barely unlocked her car before Yi-chun yanked the passenger door open and jumped inside. "Hurry up and drive." His face looked completely frantic. "If we're too late, my woman might get pregnant by another man." The secretary froze. "What?" She slowly turned her head toward him with genuine disbelief. Her brain couldn't even process what she had just heard. They were going on a date, not filming an NTR porn video. And more importantly, why was this lunatic continuously calling Ling Shuangxue his woman? The secretary stared at Yi-chun like she was witnessing a mental patient. "You seriously have issues." Yi-chun ignored her entirely. Instead, he kept anxiously looking out the windshield. "Drive, woman. Hurry." The secretary's eye twitched slightly. Intentionally, she slowly adjusted her seatbelt, adjusted the mirrors, adjusted the steering wheel, checked her lipstick in the mirror. Only after taking her sweet time did she finally start the car. Yi-chun nearly exploded watching this. "Why are you so slow?" The secretary calmly pulled out onto the road. "Because unlike you," she replied flatly, "I possess basic human dignity and a driver's license." Yi-chun almost coughed blood from anger. Inside the car ahead, Shintian looked completely relaxed while driving. Ling Shuangxue still looked annoyed from earlier. "Hey!" Shintian said casually. "Cheer up. At least you got a pretty good slap on him." Ling Shuangxue crossed her arms. "I guess." Then her eyes narrowed coldly. "But honestly, I still want to hurt that bastard even more." Hearing that, Shintian slowly smirked. "Well, I do have an idea." Ling Shuangxue immediately turned toward him seriously. "What is it?" Then Shintian added, "Though you might not like it." Ling Shuangxue's expression instantly became determined. "I'll do anything." Shintian glanced sideways toward her. Then, while keeping one hand on the steering wheel, he casually pointed downward toward himself. Ling Shuangxue blinked. "Oh." Her brain genuinely failed to process what he meant at first. Shintian sighed. "How about you give me a blowjob?" The moment those words registered, Ling Shuangxue's entire face instantly turned bright red. "Huh." She nearly jumped in her seat. How does that anger him? Even while yelling, though, her eyes kept unconsciously drifting toward Shintian's pants. Shintian calmly smirked. "Do you trust me?" Ling Shuangxue immediately froze. Then, after several seconds, "Yes." Her answer came out much quieter this time. Taking a deep breath, Ling Shuangxue slowly pulled her hair back behind her ears. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. Shintian slowed the car slightly at a red light before glancing toward her again. Ling Shuangxue leaned forward. Her eyes widened as she slowly unzipped his pants. As she reached out with trembling hands to help guide it out, the heavy shaft sprang free from the confines of Shintian's pants and slapped directly against her cheek with a soft thud. Ling Shuangxue flinched back in surprise, her face flushing a deep crimson as the warmth of Shintian's skin lingered on her face. Shintian chuckled softly at her reaction. Surprised, Ling Shuangxue could only nod, still mesmerized by the sight before her. Gathering her courage, she leaned forward again. She wrapped her lips around the tip of his cock, her technique clumsy. Her teeth accidentally scraped against his sensitive skin, causing Shintian to flinch slightly. "Sorry," Ling Shuangxue mumbled, pulling back momentarily before trying again. This time she was more careful, taking just the head into her mouth and swirling her tongue awkwardly around it. She tried to mimic what she had vaguely heard described before, but her movements were jerky and inexperienced. Her suction was inconsistent, sometimes too strong, sometimes barely there. Shintian placed a gentle hand on her head, guiding her rhythm. "Relax your jaw," he murmured encouragingly. "Use your tongue more." Ling Shuangxue tried to follow his instructions, gradually finding a somewhat more natural motion. Though still amateurish, her enthusiasm began to compensate for her lack of skill. Ling Shuangxue began to bob her head slowly, establishing an awkward rhythm. Her tongue flicked uncertainly against the underside of Shintian's cock as she moved, occasionally swirling around the sensitive head when she pulled back. Drool escaped the corners of Ling Shuangshua's mouth and trickled down her chin as she worked. All the while inside the car behind them, Yi-chun remained completely oblivious. Author, thank you so much for reading. Every Power Stone, comment and review truly helps support the novel. And the more Power Stones we get, the more chapters I'll release. Arriving at a small upscale lunch restaurant, Shin Tian smoothly pulled the Bugatti into a parking spot before stepping out with an extremely satisfied expression. Meanwhile, Ling Shuangxue exited the passenger side looking completely different. Her face was bright red. Her usually cold eyes looked slightly watery, and she refused to make eye contact with anyone. Honestly, she looked like her soul had temporarily left her body. At the same time, Yi-chun and the secretary finally arrived in the second vehicle behind them. The moment Yi-chun stepped out, his eyes immediately narrowed. Something white was visible near the corner of Ling Shuangshua's lips. Without thinking much, Yi-chun walked closer. What's that on your lip? He pointed awkwardly. That white stuff. The moment those words entered Ling Shuangshua's ears, her entire body froze. Then instantly, it's nothing. She began wildly waving her hands around in complete panic. Her voice even cracked slightly. Meanwhile, she hurriedly wiped at her lips while turning bright red all over again. Then, without hesitation, she rushed toward her secretary. Check my face. Do I look weird? The secretary blinked several times before slowly realizing what probably happened in the car earlier. Oh! Her face instantly became teasing. Meanwhile, Yi-chun stood there completely confused. But after thinking for several seconds, he suddenly relaxed internally. Looks like nothing happened between them in the car. She's probably just angry at something Shin Tian did. Hearing Yi-chen's inner thoughts, Ling Shuangxue nearly choked. Meanwhile, Shin Tian calmly walked over beside her, then naturally held her hand. Ready? Ling Shuangshua's face heated up again instantly. Still, she quietly nodded. Yeah. Seeing the two holding hands together, Yi-chun immediately bit his own lip hard enough to nearly bleed. The rage inside him was becoming overwhelming. Yet Shin Tian simply sighed inwardly. It seemed Yi-chun was slowly getting used to emotional damage. At this point, smaller interactions probably wouldn't generate any fate loss anymore. Which meant, if Shin Tian wanted bigger rewards now, he'd need to escalate things further. Without the slightest hesitation, Shin Tian suddenly let go of Ling Shuangshua's hand, then casually grabbed her ass. Ling Shuangshua's entire body stiffened slightly from the sudden touch. Instead of getting angry, her face instantly became even redder. Honestly, if someone looked carefully enough, they could practically see tiny hearts forming in her eyes. Yi-chun saw everything clearly. This bastard! I'm so fucking jealous. Unable to hold himself back, Yi-chun instantly rushed between them and swatted Shin Tian's hand away dramatically. Hey! Don't touch her like that. His face looked furious. She's my wa. Yi-chun immediately coughed awkwardly. Cough cough. I mean, she probably doesn't even like that. Shin Tian slowly raised an eyebrow, then casually looked toward Ling Shuangxue. Oh? You don't like my touch? Ling Shuangxue didn't even answer verbally. Instead, she silently grabbed Shin Tian's wrist, then placed his hand right back onto her ass herself. Yi-chen's soul visibly left his body. Ling Shuangxue remained completely calm on the surface. Truthfully, she mainly allowed it because watching Yi-chun suffer emotionally was really satisfying. Unfortunately for Shin Tian though, even after escalating things this far, the system still didn't display any additional fate loss. Seeing that, Shin Tian inwardly sighed. Looks like I need to start taking his opportunities. Without even glancing at Yi-chun, Shin Tian simply continued walking toward the restaurant entrance with Ling Shuangxue beside him. Yi-chun remained frozen in place. His face looked pale enough to resemble a ghost. His eyes even appeared slightly watery. Why? Why is she allowing this? I was supposed to be the one touching her like that. The emotional damage was becoming increasingly severe. At that moment, the secretary casually walked past Yi-chun, while adjusting her glasses slightly, then naturally followed behind Shintian and Ling Shuangxue. As someone who loved romance dramas, she found this entire scene absurdly entertaining. The handsome, rich young master, the cold CEO melting for him, the jealous third wheel suffering emotionally. It felt like watching a live-action romance series unfold in real time. As she watched Ling Shuangxue cling closer toward Shintian, the secretary quietly admitted something to herself. "I'm jealous." Inside the restaurant, the moment Shintian entered, the atmosphere completely changed. Every employee instantly became nervous. After all, young Master Shin personally arriving at their establishment was practically a once-in-a-lifetime event. The manager himself came running over while sweating bullets. "Why, young Master Shin? President Ling, please, this way." Even the waitresses nearby kept secretly glancing toward Shintian, or more accurately, staring at him like hungry wolves looking at premium meat. Some nearly walked into walls while trying to sneak looks at him. Meanwhile, the manager panicked even harder after noticing this. "Maintain professionalism," he yelled desperately. Then, in an even more insane display of overreaction, the manager actually started clearing the entire restaurant. Several confused customers were politely rushed out early while staff repeatedly apologized. Shintian looked slightly stunned seeing this. "Isn't this a bit excessive?" However, the manager immediately shook his head rapidly. "Not at all. It's an honor for our restaurant." Honestly, Shintian was too lazy to argue, but he still leaned over and casually whispered something into the manager's ear. This caused the manager to nod his head rapidly. Of course. Soon, Shintian and Ling Shuangxue were seated together at the best table in the restaurant near the windows. The secretary was respectfully guided toward a nearby secondary table. As for Yichen, he was quietly escorted elsewhere, specifically, out the back door. A waitress nervously pointed toward a small plastic table near the trash bins outside. "Here is your seating area, sir." Yichen stared blankly. "What?" The waitress smiled awkwardly. "You'll be seated here." Yichen's face instantly twisted. "Are you joking? Why the hell am I outside? Do you know who I am?" He puffed his chest out proudly. "I am Yichen, personal bodyguard of the Ling family's only daughter." The waitress blinked several times, then looked toward the manager nearby uncertainly. Meanwhile, the manager calmly cleared his throat. "Yes, young Master Shin specifically requested that you sit as far away from his date as possible." Yichen's eyes slowly turned bloodshot. At this point, he genuinely couldn't take it anymore. The humiliation, the jealousy, the disrespect. Everything Shintian had done since yesterday kept replaying inside his head over and over again. Finally, something snapped completely. "You know what?" Yichen suddenly grabbed the cheap plastic table beside him, then violently hurled it toward the manager. "Ah!" The manager screamed before getting smashed directly in the shoulder. Nearby staff immediately panicked. Yichen stormed back into the restaurant like an enraged lunatic. The doors slammed open loudly. Yichen pointed directly at Shintian. "You!" His face twisted with fury. "Fight me right now. To the death." Yichen pounded his chest. Shintian calmly sat there drinking water. "Can you not interrupt my date?" Veins bulged across Yichen's forehead. Without hesitation, he launched forward and threw a full-force punch directly toward Shintian's head. He genuinely intended to kill him. The moment Yichen's fist got close, the necklace around Shintian's neck suddenly glowed faintly. Then, boom! A transparent barrier instantly appeared around Shintian. Yichen's punch slammed into it directly. The backlash exploded outward violently. Gh! Yichen was launched backward across the restaurant like a ragdoll. Several tables shattered beneath him. He crashed into the floor before violently coughing up blood. His internal organs felt like they had been crushed. Shintian remained sitting calmly in his chair, completely unharmed. Shintian slowly glanced toward a nearby waitress who was visibly trembling. "Call the police." He casually took another sip of water. "I was just attacked." The waitress instantly snapped back to reality. "At once, young Master Shen." She hurried away in panic. Ling Shuangxue immediately rushed toward Shintian anxiously. Are you okay? Shintian nodded calmly. I'm fine. He lowered his gaze slightly. He noticed the necklace around his neck slowly crack apart into pieces, then crumble completely. Well, that's unfortunate. Seems like a waste using it this early. But whatever. Hearing his inner voice, Ling Shuangxue instantly realized what had protected him. The necklace. Yet, instead of questioning it, she simply continued checking him over carefully to ensure he wasn't injured. Yichen slowly lifted his head. His expression looked completely shaken now. Even scared. Impossible. He stared at Shintian as if he was looking at a monster. This is impossible. Yichen kept muttering the words repeatedly under his breath. Author. Thank you so much for reading. Keep sending Power Stones. I'll keep pumping out chapters. Please also leave a review. The police arrived incredibly fast. The moment the words young master of the Shin family were mentioned over the phone, the situation immediately became high priority, and leading the officers inside was one of the most famous cops in the entire city, Wan Yizhen. The moment she entered the restaurant, attention shifted toward her instantly. Short black hair, sharp red eyes, a serious, disciplined expression. Her fitted police uniform highlighted her athletic figure perfectly. Even the restaurant staff unconsciously straightened up when she walked past. Wan Yizhen quickly scanned the destroyed interior before her eyes landed on Shintian. You must be Shintian, the young master of the Shin family. Her tone remained calm and professional as she approached. Shintian stood up politely before shaking her hand. Yes, officer. Then he lightly gestured toward the destroyed tables nearby. I asked the staff to call because I was attacked. Yichen noticed Wan Yizhen clearly, and immediately, his brain entered horny mode. Damn! I want to see her tits. Those things are huge. Without realizing it, Yichen stared directly at her chest greedily. Wan Yizhen instantly frowned, because she thought he had actually spoken aloud. Her expression immediately became colder. Turning sharply toward Yichen, she walked over intimidatingly. Sir, if you continue making disrespectful comments, you'll be gagged. Her eyes were filled with disgust. The man already looked like trouble. Yichen instantly became confused. But I didn't say anything. Wan Yizhen's brows furrowed harder. So now you're lying too? Yichen nearly coughed blood. He genuinely had no idea what was happening anymore. Wan Yizhen forced herself to stay calm and professional. Taking a breath, she turned back toward Shintian. Young Master Shun, do you have evidence besides eyewitness testimony? Shintian casually nodded toward the ceiling. Security cameras. You can just review the footage. Hearing this, Yichen's face instantly went pale. Cold sweat began dripping down his forehead, because he knew perfectly well. He was screwed, and unlike random street thugs, he couldn't simply run from the police. Making an enemy out of the government itself would be disastrous. At his current strength, he absolutely could not fight an entire country. Yichen could only sit there quietly while waiting for the footage to be reviewed. Several minutes later, Wan Yizhen returned. This time, with handcuffs already in her hand. Her expression was cold. Sir, you are under arrest for attempted assault. Surprisingly, Yichen obediently stood up without resisting. However, internally, he still remained completely shameless. Whatever. At least now I get to spend time near this beauty. Joke's on you, Shintian. You basically just introduced another woman into my future harem. Wan Yizhen froze slightly, because she clearly saw Yichen's lips never move. Yet she still heard the voice. For a split second, a look of genuine shock flashed across her eyes. But as a trained officer, she quickly suppressed it and maintained her professionalism. Without saying anything, she began escorting Yichen toward the exit. Just before leaving, another voice echoed inside her head. Thank God justice still exists. Someone this violent and unstable really should be locked away. Wan Yizhen's steps paused briefly, because this time, The voice belonged to Shintian. What exactly is going on? Ruan Yijin walked Yi-chun outside. Her thoughts remained chaotic. Hearing inner voices should have been impossible. Yet she had clearly heard both Yi-chun and Shintian without either of them speaking aloud. Compared to Yi-chen's disgusting thoughts, Shintian's inner voice had left a surprisingly good impression on her. Honestly, Ruan Yijin dealt with arrogant rich second generations constantly. Most relied on money, threats, or family influence to solve problems. Yet Shintian, despite clearly having the power and status to crush Yi-chen privately, still chose to let the police handle things legally. That alone dramatically improved Ruan Yijin's opinion of him. Looking at Yi-chen now only disgusted her more, because even while handcuffed, his eyes still kept drifting toward her waist and chest, like an uncontrollable horny stray dog. Eventually, Ruan Yijin led him toward a police cruiser. Yi-chen obediently climbed into the back seat. Internally, he immediately became excited again. Ha ha ha! A private ride with this beauty. This is amazing. I can work my riz on her. Hearing that inner voice, a small smirk slowly appeared on Ruan Yijin's face. Then she suddenly turned toward another officer nearby. Hey! She waved toward one of the largest officers present. The man was absolutely massive. Tall, muscular, thick beard, hairy arms. The type of cop who looked capable of bench pressing any weight. Ruan Yijin casually pointed toward Yi-chun in the back seat. Can you take this guy down to the station for me? I'll follow behind separately. The giant, bearded officer instantly smiled brightly. His deep appearance completely failed to match his voice. Of course, sweetie. Then his eyes landed on Yi-chun. Oh my! A blush appeared on his aged face. He's kinda cute. I wouldn't mind driving this handsome little thing down personally. The giant officer happily started walking toward the cruiser. Yi-chen's face instantly lost all color. Oh! Wait! The moment the giant, bearded officer opened the driver's side door, Yi-chun completely lost composure. No! He immediately began slamming his head repeatedly against the window. No, no, no. The beauty has to take me. He desperately looked toward Ruan Yijin. Please. I beg you. Ruan Yijin didn't even glance back. Instead, she calmly responded while opening her own cruiser door. And why exactly would I need to? Your rights don't include choosing which officer transports you. She entered her own vehicle, leaving Yi-chun alone with the massive, bearded cop. The officer slowly turned around and smiled warmly toward Yi-chun. Seatbelt, sweetheart? The moment the massive, bearded officer leaned closer, Yi-chun completely lost his mind. Get away from me! He immediately started kicking wildly inside the back seat like a trapped animal. The entire police cruiser shook violently. The large officer simply sighed tiredly. He dealt with resisting suspects all the time. Placing one hand against his cheek, the bearded cop spoke in a gentle tone. Well, sweetheart, if you keep acting up, you're gonna get pepper sprayed and tossed. But of course, Yi-chun absolutely refused to calm down. Don't call me sweetheart. He kicked around violently again. At this point, even nearby officers started staring. The giant officer's expression slowly became flat, and his voice became deep. All right then. Without hesitation, he took out pepper spray. Then the taser. Yi-chen's eyes widened. Wait! BZZZT. Aha! The taser hit him directly. Yi-chen's entire body convulsed violently inside the back seat. Then, PSSSHHH. Pepper spray followed immediately afterward. My eyes! Within seconds, the mighty son of destiny looked absolutely miserable. Hair messy, face red, eyes tearing uncontrollably. Yi-chen's body twitched while coughing and crying inside the back seat. The large officer buckled his own seatbelt. There we go. Much calmer. Special event. Every single review you leave on this novel equals a chapter. If we reach 500 Power Stones equals mass release. Why did you attack Shintian? Ruan Yijin's calm voice echoed throughout the interrogation room. The atmosphere was cold and dimly lit. A metal table separated the two. Yi-chun sat handcuffed to a steel chair bolted directly into the floor while glaring defensively ahead. Ruan Yijin calmly reviewed paperwork across from him. I didn't even touch him, Yi-chun argued loudly. You saw the footage. Ruan Yijin sighed tiredly. This man is exhausting. Leaning slightly forward against the table, she calmly explained. You attempted to assault him. That is still a crime. The footage clearly shows you charging at him aggressively. Then she narrowed her eyes. So why not simply explain why you attacked him? Yi-chun barely listened, because his attention remained completely focused elsewhere, specifically on Ruan Yijin's chest. His eyes practically glued themselves there. Yi-chun's thoughts became increasingly shameless. Damn! I want to suck on those titties. Lord, guide my mouth to greatness. A vein immediately appeared on Ruan Yijin's forehead. Yi-chun's inner voice made her deeply uncomfortable. Clicking her tongue in annoyance, Ruan Yijin suddenly stood up. Seeing as you refuse to cooperate, she turned toward the door. Yi-chun shamelessly stared at her backside while she walked away. I want to bury my face in that. Bang! The interrogation room door slammed shut violently. Several seconds later, the door slowly opened again, and stepping inside was the massive, bearded officer from earlier. Hey there, handsome. I'm back. The moment Yi-chun saw him, his face instantly turned deathly pale. No! He immediately started struggling against the handcuffs violently. I want my phone call. I want my phone call. The bearded officer slowly closed the door behind himself, then smiled warmly. Oh, don't worry, sweetheart. You'll get your phone call eventually. Yi-chun looked like a man watching death itself approach. Please don't touch me again. Walking through a quiet city park, Shin Tian and Ling Shuangxue continued strolling side by side, hand in hand. Meanwhile, the secretary had already excused herself earlier after the restaurant incident, partly because she didn't want to interrupt their romance, and partly because watching them together was beginning to emotionally damage her own single status. It was becoming a mental health issue, so now only Shin Tian and Ling Shuangxue remained. The two casually talked while walking along the stone pathway beneath the trees. Mostly small talk, random topics, comfortable silence. For once, Ling Shuangxue genuinely felt relaxed. As they passed by a nearby bench, Shin Tian suddenly stopped walking. Ling Shuangxue blinked. Following his gaze, she noticed an old man sitting quietly beneath a tree. His eyes were closed, legs crossed. At first glance, he looked normal, yet faint pain could clearly be seen across his face. Ling Shuangxue lowered her voice slightly. Is something wrong with him? Shin Tian slowly nodded. Yeah, he's cultivating incorrectly. Then, without hesitation, Shin Tian walked over toward the old man respectfully. Excuse me, sir. Would you like help with your cultivation? I can see you're struggling a bit. The old man slowly opened his eyes, then coughed lightly. A small amount of blood even escaped his mouth. Instead of gratitude, his brows furrowed slightly. Young man, his tone sounded mildly annoyed. You should know better than to interrupt someone while cultivating. Ling Shuangxue immediately frowned slightly upon hearing that response. Shin Tian bit the inside of his cheek, because he clearly remembered this exact scene from the web novel. Originally, when Yi-chun encountered this old man, the old man had immediately acted warm and friendly toward him. Yet now, he was acting annoyed with Shin Tian instead. Yeah. Protagonist halo favoritism. You're lucky I'm only here to steal Yi-chun's opportunities. Hearing Shin Tian's inner voice, Ling Shuangxue almost laughed. Instead of arguing, Shin Tian simply acted directly, because he already understood something. Without the protagonist's halo, talking too much was pointless. Actions worked better. So without another word, Shin Tian calmly placed one hand against the old man's back, then slowly circulated his own qi. Unlike the old man's violent and forced circulation, Shin Tian guided the qi naturally and smoothly, allowing it to flow properly throughout the old man's meridians. The old man's expression changed. The pain in his chest rapidly faded. His previously chaotic chi immediately stabilized. Even his breathing became lighter. The old man's eyes widened. He could clearly feel the improvement inside his body. The blocked feeling tormenting him for months suddenly loosened dramatically. Quickly standing up, the old man stared at Shintian with complete shock. "Oh, young man, what is this method?" The old man's earlier annoyance vanished completely. Only amazement remained. "How did you just fix my chi circulation?" The old man looked at Shintian almost reverently now. "Are you some hidden senior?" Shintian almost burst out laughing on the spot. Still managing to hold himself together somehow, he smiled politely. No, I'm not some senior. Just a humble young master of the Shin family." The moment those words entered the old man's ears, his eyes lit up even brighter. "Perfect!" The old man grabbed Shintian's hands excitedly. "Then why not marry my granddaughter?" Shintian blinked. "Ha!" The old man became increasingly enthusiastic. "I'll even throw in my daughter as a mistress." For several seconds, Shintian genuinely couldn't process what he had just heard. Then his shoulders started shaking violently, because he was trying desperately not to laugh. Ling Shuangxue instantly reacted at terrifying speed. "No!" She immediately grabbed onto Shintian's arm possessively. "He's taken." Although her tone remained cold, there was very obvious jealousy hidden beneath it. The old man glanced toward her calmly, then stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Well, young lady, it's normal for an outstanding man to have more than one wife." Then, as if generously compromising, he added, "You can simply become the main wife." Ling Shuangxue froze instantly. The old man was completely serious, because in his eyes, Shintian was absurdly valuable. Not only was he the young master of the Shin family, but he also possessed terrifying cultivation insight at such a young age. To the old man, this was basically the perfect grandson-in-law candidate descending from heaven itself. Ling Shuangxue initially wanted to argue. However, after thinking about Shintian for several seconds, she slowly realized something. A man like him, ridiculously handsome, powerful, rich, a villain, and capable of attracting heroines left and right. There was honestly no universe where he'd only end up with one woman. Realizing that truth made her strangely quiet. Ling Shuangxue lowered her head slightly before muttering softly, "I'll withdraw my objection." Her face gradually turned red, especially after thinking about being the main wife. Shintian finally lost it slightly. He turned away while covering his mouth. "Ift." And not only that, ding! Host has successfully stolen an opportunity from the protagonist. Yi-chun has lost 700 fate value. Remaining fate value, 7,000. Special event. Every single review you leave on this novel equals a chapter. If we reach 500 Power Stones equals mass release. You guys are at one extra chap. Before leaving, the old man enthusiastically handed Shintian his personal contact information. "Call me any time." The old man laughed heartily before finally walking away with noticeably lighter steps than before. Shintian simply shook his head while putting his phone away. What a terrifying old man. Beside him, Ling Shuangxue quietly watched the old man disappear into the distance before tugging lightly at Shintian's sleeve. "Hey, who exactly was that? Is he someone important?" Shintian gave a small nod as they resumed walking through the park together. "He's the grandfather of one of the future heroines." Ling Shuangxue immediately narrowed her eyes. "Another heroine." Shintian laughed lightly. "Don't look at me like that. His family itself isn't especially rich or powerful, but he's still connected to a heroine. So getting on his good side now will help me later when I eventually meet her." Ling Shuangxue puffed her cheeks slightly, then suddenly hugged onto Shintian's arm like a koala. "Remember, I'm the main wife." Hearing her say that with such seriousness made Shintian chuckle. So naturally, he decided to tease her. "Well," he casually patted her head, "whoever gives me their virginity first can be the main wife." Then grinned. "First come, first served." The moment those words entered Ling Shuangshue's ears, she froze completely, then suddenly grabbed Shintian's hand tightly. All right. Her expression became oddly determined. Let's go to a hotel. We'll have sex right now. I refuse to lose the main wife position. Shintian's eyes widened instantly. Wait. You were supposed to call me a pervert. Ignoring him, Ling Shuangshue began to pull him forward seriously. I'm not joking. Shintian simply stared at her for several seconds, then eventually shrugged helplessly. Honestly, he wasn't exactly against the idea. Inside a police station, Yichun sat alone inside the interrogation room, holding a phone tightly against his ear. Hey, it's me, Yichun. His voice sounded unusually quiet, partly because he was trying to sound pitiful, and partly because he was still emotionally recovering from the terrifying bearded officer from earlier. Honestly, the experience had left scars. Even now, Yichun occasionally sniffled slightly while trying to hide the fact he had almost cried earlier. On the other side of the phone, Ling Han sat inside his study looking confused after receiving the unexpected call. Detained? What happened? Yichun instantly bit his lip. There was absolutely no way he could openly admit he had tried attacking Shintian in public. Especially not after acting like a righteous expert this whole time. So after several seconds, he cleared his throat dramatically. Uncle Han. His tone suddenly became wronged and aggrieved. I was set up. The moment Yichun addressed him as Uncle Han, Ling Han's expression visibly softened. Because in his eyes, that title basically implied Yichun already viewed himself as future family. Ling Han liked that idea very much. Immediately, his tone became warmer. Ahaha, don't worry about it. I'll handle this immediately. You just stay calm. Then his voice turned colder. We'll figure out who dared frame you like this. And once we do, we'll teach them a proper lesson. Hearing those words, Yichun instantly felt confidence return. His earlier humiliation began fading rapidly. A smile even spread across his face again. Of course, we'll definitely get revenge on this loser. Thank you, Uncle Han. I'll repay this favor in the future. Ling Han laughed loudly from the other end. Repay me? Don't say something so distant. Then he proudly added, your future family after all. Hearing that, Yichen's smile widened even further. At this moment, he genuinely felt like his future was bright once again. The phone call ended. Not even 10 minutes later, the police station suddenly became chaotic. The police chief himself rushed into the observation room outside the interrogation area looking pale and drenched in sweat. The moment Ruan Yijin saw him, she frowned slightly. Sir? Are you all right? Slap. The police chief suddenly backhanded her across the face. The entire room went silent. Several nearby officers froze in shock. Ruan Yijin herself stumbled slightly before slowly turning back toward him. The police chief exploded angrily. You idiot! Why would you offend the Ling family? His face looked furious. They may be declining, but they're still far more powerful than this police department. Then he pointed wildly around the station. Do you know how much money they donate here? What happens if we lose that funding? That's almost 40% of our budget. The other officers nearby all lowered their heads awkwardly. Nobody dared intervene. Ruan Yijin slowly touched her burning cheek, then coldly glared at her superior. Sir, you just committed battery against an officer, and you're openly admitting corruption. Her voice became sharper. That's illegal. The police chief simply scoffed dismissively. You're still just a little girl. You don't understand how the real world works yet. Then, without another word, he stormed directly into the interrogation room. Watching this happen, Ruan Yijin's expression darkened completely. She quietly took out her phone. Then, after hesitating briefly, she decided to call Shintian. Because no matter what, he deserved to know the truth. After all, he had genuinely tried letting the law handle things properly. And now, that justice was clearly about to fail. I'm sorry, Ruan Yijin thought bitterly. Meanwhile, inside the interrogation room, the police chief immediately rushed over toward Yichun. then personally unlocked his restraints. "I'm so sorry." He repeatedly bowed his head apologetically. "Please forgive my officers for mistreating you, young man." Ichin instantly began to be arrogant. He casually waved one hand like a forgiving emperor. It's all right. I'm a generous person." Then his expression became smug. "Just don't let it happen again." Yi-chun was forgiving the police chief only because this police station contained one of his future harem members. "I'm so merciful." Naturally, he wanted to appear magnanimous and righteous. Meanwhile, the police chief wiped sweat from his forehead in relief. Thank you so much for your understanding." Yi-chun proudly lifted his chin slightly. He once again felt like the chosen one of heaven itself. However, that would not last long. As a second later, special event. Every single review you leave on this novel equals a chapter. If we reach 500 Power Stones equals mass release. You guys are at 2 extra chapters. The interrogation room door suddenly opened again. Ruan Yijin stepped inside with a cold expression while holding her phone up. The moment the police chief saw her, his face twisted angrily. "What are you doing in here?" He pointed directly toward the door. "Are you trying to cause more trouble? You're suspended. Go home immediately." Seeing this, Yi-chun immediately wanted to defend his future woman. Right as he opened his mouth, a calm male voice suddenly echoed from the phone speaker. "Police chief, it's not very professional to scream at one of your own officers." The room instantly froze. The police chief frowned. "Who the hell is this?" His tone became even angrier. "Do you know who you're talking to?" "Not him." Yi-chun knew that voice well. His stomach began to turn. This bastard better not ruin this. Yi-chun genuinely felt nervous. Then Shen Tian's voice calmly sounded once more. "Shen Tian, young master of the Shen family." A brief pause followed. Then his tone became colder. "And last I checked, my father happens to know the Minister of Public Security personally. It'd be unfortunate if you suddenly lost your job." The instant those words entered the police chief's ears, his legs almost gave out beneath him. Cold sweat exploded across his forehead. "Young Master Shun, there seems to be some misunderstanding." "Shut up." Shen Tian interrupted him immediately. "Slap yourself." Without hesitation, the police chief instantly obeyed. Smack! He slapped himself across the face hard. Yi-chun stared in disbelief. The police chief from earlier was a little scared of him, but to Shen Tian he looked like a terrified dog. "Why, young Master Shen?" The police chief kept nervously slapping himself while trying desperately to explain. "You have to understand." Smack! The Ling family personally called. Smack! "I had no power here." Smack! He tried sounding reasonable. Tried finding excuses. Shen Tian clearly didn't care. "You assaulted one of your officers. That is illegal and extremely inappropriate for someone in your position. So here's what's going to happen. I want you to arrest yourself. My family lawyers will contact Officer Wan personally to assist her. Goodbye." Click. The call ended instantly. Silence filled the interrogation room. The police chief stood there, frozen, like a man watching his entire life collapse around him. Then slowly, his face twisted violently, and suddenly, he turned toward Yi-chun. "It's all your fault." Bam! He immediately started punching Yi-chun repeatedly. Yi-chun fell backward onto the floor, completely caught off guard. "You ruined my life." The police chief kicked and punched him hysterically. He couldn't touch Ruan Yijin anymore, not after learning she had a connection to Shen Tian. So instead, he took his anger out on the easier target. Yi-chun himself looked completely dumbfounded while covering his head. "Are you insane?" Before he could properly retaliate, several officers suddenly rushed into the room. "Taser! BZZZT!" The police chief convulsed violently before stopping his attacks. Within seconds, he was restrained in handcuffs, and personally placing the cuffs on him was Ruan Yijin herself. Her face remained completely cold. "Sir, you are under arrest." Yi-chun slowly stood back up from the floor while wiping blood from his nose. That's what you get, you corrupt pig. He spat toward the police chief angrily. His expression shifted again. Turning toward Ruan Yi-jin, he tried putting on a cool and dependable look. Thank you, Officer Ruan. He lightly flexed his arms afterward. Though honestly, I could have handled him myself. The muscle display looked incredibly pathetic, especially considering he had just spent the last hour screaming, crying, getting tossed, and begging for a different police escort. Ruan Yi-jin simply rolled her eyes. This man somehow became more embarrassing every time he opened his mouth. Without responding, she dragged the police chief out of the room. Yi-chun immediately smiled proudly to himself. Yep, another woman impressed by my masculine charm. The moment he tried following her out, a massive figure suddenly blocked the doorway completely. Yi-chun's smile slowly disappeared. The bearded officer stood there casually. Without warning, he reached forward and grabbed Yi-chun gently by the waist, pulling him closer, chest against chest. Now, sweetheart. The officer smiled warmly. You aren't going anywhere yet. Then horrifyingly, he licked his lips slightly. A chill instantly ran down Yi-chun's spine. He shoved himself backward immediately. Didn't you hear? The Ling family personally called for me. The bearded officer chuckled deeply. Maybe earlier. Then his smile widened slightly. But now, the Shin family personally got involved. Big difference. Yi-chun's face instantly darkened again. After several seconds, he could only grit his teeth and turn back around. Then angrily slammed himself back into the chair. Fine. I'll wait. Then Yi-chun pointed accusingly toward the bearded officer. But don't touch me again. The bearded officer simply leaned against the doorway happily. No promises, handsome. Elsewhere inside the station, Ruan Yi-jin closed the holding cell door after locking the former police chief inside. The man who once was her superior now sat defeated behind bars. Yet despite successfully arresting him, Ruan Yi-jin's emotions still felt weird. Her heart had not calmed down since the phone call earlier. As she walked down the empty hallway alone, her thoughts repeatedly replayed Shin Tion's words. You assaulted one of your officers. That is illegal. My family lawyers will contact Officer Ruan personally. Nobody had ever stepped in for her like that before, especially not someone with Shin Tion's status. Most rich young masters only cared about themselves. Yet Shin Tion, despite being from one of the top 4 families, actually cared about justice being carried out properly. And more importantly, he had protected her. Eventually, Ruan Yi-jin turned a corner away from the others, then slowly leaned back against the wall. Her legs suddenly felt weak, so she quietly slid down until sitting on the floor. Taking a slow breath, she pulled out her phone. Then, after hesitating briefly, she opened a photo of Shin Tion that was trending on the internet. The image showed him standing beside a Bugatti while holding flowers. Even through a phone screen, he looked unfairly handsome. Ruan Yi-jin quietly stared at the picture for several seconds, then slowly held the phone close against her chest. Young Master Shen, her voice came out soft. I won't let your sense of justice be destroyed. I won't let someone like Yi-chun walk free so easily. A faint blush even appeared across her face. And for the first time in her entire life, Ruan Yi-jin realized something terrifying. Her mind, which had always been filled only with rules, justice, and responsibility, now kept thinking about a man instead. Special event. Every single review you leave on this novel equals a chapter. If we reach 500 Power Stones equals mass release. You guys are at 3 extra chapters. Keep it up.